since we spoke yesterday. The story we focused on in our international update yesterday was on Israel, and we were telling you about the protests that were taking place, the general strike that was called yesterday that had to do with the pressure that is being brought to bear on that country's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to negotiate a deal that would see the release of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza. Well, developments overnight. Netanyahu has now apologized to the nation, to Israel, for the deaths of the hostages as pressure mounts on him. As if that were not enough, out of the United Kingdom, that country deciding to suspend some arms sales to Israel, saying that there is, quote-unquote, a clear risk that the equipment could be used to commit serious violations of international law. So that story that we told you about yesterday moving quite significantly over the last 24 hours, and it's one of those that we will continue to watch and update you on here on the Morning Brief. The Foreign Secretary there in the UK, David Lammy, saying that the UK would be suspending 30 of the 350 arms export licenses to Israel. One thing I forgot to do yesterday, neglected to do, let me put it that way, was basically to just thank you for your generosity, one, but also thank my colleagues who've been standing in the build-up before the start of the Morning Brief. I believe it's important to do that. I may have neglected to do it on day one. Please allow me to do it on day two. Oliver Dixon, John Gerika, as well as, of course, Stephen Grotes, who were very kind and generous and very supportive to me as I was preparing to take up this role. Let me tell you what's coming up on the show today. Your regulars, Zaikan, will update you on the sport. Ndauleng will be with us to give you an update from the business world, as well as Rob Byrne with your traffic updates throughout the morning. But there's also a strong focus on the economy, as we did yesterday on day one, and that's because we will be focusing on the financial results from Transnet that came out yesterday. Losses of up to 7 billion rand announced by Transnet yesterday. That is massive. That is massive. You and I know the impact that Transnet has. When Transnet fires, it moves goods very efficiently across our economy. It basically allows the arteries of the economy to flow. But when Transnet doesn't fire, when there are problems within Transnet, it leads to even bigger problems, as you saw in the last 24 months or so, that then impact the economy. So we'll have a conversation and reflect on the results coming out of Transnet from yesterday. Professor Jan Havenga will join us after 7, and we'll also touch base on this issue of the construction mafia. You've heard about the construction mafia and the extortion syndicates that are basically asking people for, not asking, in fact, demanding so-called protection fees from people, business people and people involved in projects and construction. That seems to be a development that is... It's becoming quite concerning, and something has got to be done about it to get a hold of that situation. We'll focus on that also after 7. Let me take you now to our national diary and just give you a sense of what you can expect throughout the day on the national diary. Anne Musa, I'm hoping that you are already on the line for me, Anne. In fact, I'm told she's not ready yet, but we will touch base with Anne Musa. Let's go to your weather before we get to Anne. Let me just tell you, before I do that, let me take a quick break and then we'll give you your weather and then go to Anne for our national diary.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about Outsurance. Here's Amy.
To anyone who has not reached out to Outsurance, what are you doing? Reach out today.
Yusuf, 45 from Tegadal, pays just 700 Rand a month for his 2021 VW Polo.
It just shows that Outsurance is top of the tops when it comes to insurers.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
Good morning. You're listening to the morning brief here on SAFM. Let's now that I've found my bearings, let me take you to Ann Musa for our daily news diary. Ann, good morning. What are we looking at? Breaking news coming out of KwaZulu-Natal, but you also have other stories on the diary this morning.
Well, good morning, Tulas. Yes, indeed. We are looking at news from KZN on the 6 suspects that were killed in a shootout with police, and not much as yet, but it's being said that the suspects were actually involved in some extortion cases as well as the drug trade. We have reaction to the ANC KZN Secretary Bheki Mtholo's apology, and this after he accused Nahawu of causing poor service delivery in various government departments, and also reaction with the Justice Minister Thulasizwe Simelane, who's appearing before the ANC's Integrity Commission, and that to clarify her involvement in the VBS bank loan. The African Transformation Movement is seeking a review of the two-part retirement system cap, which is 30,000 rand, saying that amount is unreasonable, and ATM is calling on government to actually reconsider its decision on the maximum withdrawal. It believes that cap is not sufficient for already cash-strapped workers. And Police Minister Senzo Mchunu will deliver a statement to the Assembly regarding the actions taken by the South African Police Services to address extortion threats in the country. And we know that allegations of extortion have been making headlines recently, with some doctors, schools, and also small businesses, just among the few who allegedly become victims of extortionists who are demanding a so-called protection fee. So this criminal activity is expected to come under intense debate in the National Assembly later today, where the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, will outline the actions taken by the police to deal with the threat posed by those committing those acts. And the Senzo Mahiwa trial resumes in the Pretoria High Court this morning. It was adjourned yesterday to allow the defence to go through additional ballistic evidence they'd received, and the additional documents were supplied by the ballistic expert Colonel Chris Mangena following a request by the Defence Counsel, Charles Mnisi, during the cross-examination on Friday. We know that 5 men are on trial for the murder of the Bafana captain Senzo Mahiwa, who was killed at Kelly Kumalo's parental home in Vosloorus in 2014. And just lastly, the bail hearing of 2 of the 5 accused of manufacturing and dealing in drugs is this morning expected to resume. That's at the Groblersdal Magistrates Court in Limpopo, and the 2 South Africans, being Frederick Botha and Simpuwe Kumalo, were arrested at an illegal drug manufacturing lab on a farm in July, and their Mexican co-accused have since abandoned their bail applications. Just some of the stories that we are looking at.
A packed diary there, and thank you so much for that. That's Ann Musa there. She'll be keeping you updated from the news desk on all of those stories and a lot more.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
In a moment, we'll give you that international update, and today we are focusing on the Russo-Ukrainian war. But before we get there, let's give you a sense of what the weather is looking like this morning. We start with this. There are no severe weather alerts. In fact, impact-based warnings. There are none of the warnings issued by the South African Weather Services, but there is extremely high fire danger conditions which are expected over the central and northern parts of the Northern Cape, as well as the northeastern parts of the Western Cape and the western half of the Eastern Cape. So your weather for the rest of the country: in Pretoria, the weather is fine with a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 27. The expected UVB sunburn index in Pretoria is extreme. In Johannesburg, the weather is fine with a minimum of 8, a maximum of 26. Vereeniging fine, 7 to 27. Mbombela is fine with a minimum of 10 and a maximum of 24. Polokwane is fine with a minimum of 6, maximum of 25. Mahikeng fine, 9 to 29. Vryburg is fine with a minimum of 6 and a maximum of 30. Bloemfontein in the Free State is fine with a minimum of 7 and a maximum of 30. Kimberley is fine and the minimum is 9, the maximum temperature being 31. In Uppington in the Northern Cape, it's fine and windy and a minimum of 12, maximum of 29. Cape Town is partly cloudy. The wind there is light to moderate northwesterly. The minimum is 15 and the maximum is 17. The expected UVB sunburn index in Cape Town is moderate. In George, it's cloudy, becoming partly cloudy in the afternoon. The wind is light southerly, a minimum temperature of 20 and a maximum of 26. In Gqeberha, it's fine, becoming cloudy in the afternoon. The wind in Gqeberha is moderate to fresh northeasterly, becoming southwesterly by late morning. It's a minimum of 13 and a maximum of 29. East London is fine, becoming partly cloudy in the evening. The wind is moderate to fresh northeasterly, becoming moderate southwesterly by late evening. It's a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 29. In Durban, it's partly cloudy in the morning. Otherwise, it's fine. The wind is moderate to fresh northerly to northeasterly, reaching strong from the afternoon. It's a minimum of 16 and a maximum of 26 in Durban today, and the expected sunburn index is high. Richards Bay is partly cloudy in the morning. Otherwise, it's fine. The wind is moderate to fresh northerly to northeasterly, reaching strong from the afternoon. It's a minimum of 15 and a maximum of 28. And lastly, Pietermaritzburg is partly cloudy with morning fog patches. Otherwise, it's fine with a minimum of 11 and a maximum of 31.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
To this now, Ukraine is seeking the permission of its Western allies for it to launch long-range strikes inside Russian territory. This as the Russo-Ukrainian war takes on a fresh intensity, with Russia pounding Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, with missile and drone attacks overnight into Monday morning. The Guardian newspaper reporting that Ukraine's Air Force says it destroyed 22 out of the 35 missiles and 20 out of 23 attack drones launched by Russia on Monday morning. This as Ukraine's surprise incursion into Russia's Kursk region is reported to have slowed since it began about a week ago, while Russia is reported to be targeting the strategic eastern Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk. Let's welcome Professor Roland Henwood, a political scientist and commentator from the University of Pretoria. Prof, good morning. There was a sense that Ukraine's incursion into the Kursk region would not go without a strong reply from Russia. Is this what we are seeing, the moves by Russia on the Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk?
Good morning. I just want correction. I'm not professor, please. Yes, the incursion into Russia has gone much quicker and much further than most people expected, with very little resistance from Russia. That seems to be changing, but it's not the kind of resistance that especially I think Ukraine expected. They expected, and it seems the plan was, I mean, we're speculating because there's no definite answers, but it seems that the Ukrainians gambled in a way on Russia withdrawing some of its troops from the Eastern Front to defend its home territory directly. And that hasn't happened. Russia has deployed more, let's call them junior or less experienced troop deployments to defend the Russian territory, and they've kept the forces on the Eastern Front pushing in, especially in the area of the city of Pokrovsk, because that is a key point for Russia. If they can take control of that city, it has huge implications for Ukraine in terms of the Eastern Front, in that is a hub that serves as a very important transportation point, both in terms of a railway and other deployments. So if they can take control of that city, it means that the last important city in the Donetsk area is under Russian control.
Yeah,
and that seems to be the focus that they keep on pushing at, not defending at this stage with everything they have, the home territory of Russia.
In fact, the importance of Pokrovsk is highlighted by the comments by the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky himself, who described the situation as extremely difficult and said, quote, "If we lose Pokrovsk, the entire front line will crumble." So worries about the eastern front line there. So would you say, and is it your sense that this was a miscalculation on the part of Ukraine, the incursion into the Kursk region of Russia?
Well, again, we're speculating. It's difficult to say. It may be miscalculation. On the other hand, it may in the long term have different results and value. And I think that depends. What we must keep in mind is we're coming to the end of summer, which means we're coming to the end of the window of serious fighting in Ukraine. We've seen this in the previous years, where end of summer, the way operations are conducted changes completely. You cannot have the big movements and the developments on the front. It becomes much more static even than it is now. And we must keep this in mind. There are no major movements on the front line. It's fairly small but significant developments that happen across the front line. The fall of Pokrovsk would be a major development favoring Russia, but you don't know what the long-term outcome is going to be still at this stage. It may be, and this is what was speculated about, that Ukraine may hold this territory as a bargaining chip going forward. Now that of course will depend on what Russia is going to do. Are they going to come back at Ukraine with as much as possible, trying to drive them out, or will this become another part of a fairly static front line, and Putin ignoring the criticism and the consequences for now of the Ukrainian forces inside Russia, kind of living with it in terms of first going for his objective in the Donetsk area. That will cement Russia's control of the Donetsk area. So a lot of strategic and political uncertainty, but movements that may be significant in the long run.
So two other developments as well that seem to speak to the intensity of the situation at the moment. Poland basically activating their aircraft and other allies, in that region, NATO allies in that region, activating their aircraft to basically do all they can to defend their airspace in light of the increased drone and missile attacks by Russia into Ukraine. But also there's talk of, hawks within the government in Russia talking about the need to revisit the nuclear protocols in terms of what would constitute a level of threat against Russia that would lead to an activation of all of that. That is dangerous territory, is it not?
Oh yes, definitely. But I think that indicates also a movement in terms of what is happening. The use of drones and missiles have been significantly increased, especially drones, unmanned aerial vehicles that are used offensively. And with that, always a danger of something going out of control. We've had one or two incidents in the conflict where not attacks, but drones have gone out of control and landed or exploded where they weren't supposed to go. And that can happen with the increased number of drones, also with the self-defense mechanisms in place to shoot down these drones. And the indication is that Poland is sending a message also to Russia that we will defend ourselves, be careful where you go, we have the ability. And then also the increase in these is not just a new technological phase in warfare, but it's a very important part of the overall strategy. I mean, Russia's continued attacks on civilian sites, Kiev cities, is part of a psychological war also, in intimidating the people of Ukraine in the context of the war. Hence the Ukrainian response that, well, if you do this, we will do the same. Now, they haven't been able to engage Russia with the magnitude, and the main reason for that is the limitations placed on Ukraine. They are wholly dependent on material supplied by NATO states,
Yes.
and they may not use them to attack certain outside of a certain sphere, but also certain targets in Russia.
Yeah.
And Ukraine wants to go at it differently. To do that, they have to develop their own capability, and they are doing that, but of course they can't, with their war, develop at the same pace as they would have normally done. And that is another dimension that may escalate the war even further, but it may increase the risks in the region.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for your insights this morning, Roland Hanwood, who is a political scientist and commentator from the University of Pretoria, weighing in there on the situation in Ukraine, the Russo-Ukrainian war that has been ongoing since February 2022, reaching certain new levels of intensity on various fronts, firstly on the front into the Kursk region, but now in the eastern front around the city of Pokrovsk in Ukraine. Tactical decisions being made at this particular point by both sides in the war that's been ongoing between Russia and Ukraine. That conversation brings us to 6:30. Let's get an update on your headlines with Ann Musa.
Good morning. In the headlines, the debate on extortion in the country will take centre stage in the National Assembly today. Police Minister Senzo Mchunu is expected to deliver a ministerial statement in the House. The Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Pak Stau says he hopes trade relations with China can be expanded further. China is South Africa's biggest trading partner. And the US President Joe Biden says he believes the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is doing enough to close a long-anticipated hostage for ceasefire deal with Hamas. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning, out in Mpumalanga. We're just getting reports of an overturned truck on the R40 at Rocky Drift. That's between White River and Mbombela. We'll keep an eye on that R40 this morning for you, let you know exactly what the impact of that is. But reports coming through of a truck that is overturned at Rocky Drift area. The R59 into Joburg, probably worth avoiding this morning from the Vaal. There's been quite a big crash between Klip River Drive and Swart Copies Road. Really heavy backlog of traffic and very heavily congested on the Klip River Drive off-ramp as motorists realise that it's a long haul up ahead there, so off-ramping at Klip River Drive to try and hit the alternatives. RED2 comes into play. If you're driving in from the Vaal this morning, you might want to consider that as a way through. Cape Town, there's heavy pressure all over Mitchell's Plain. It's been queuing up since before even 6 a.m. on AZ Berman. You basically got roadworks from Lenta here right up to the R300 and then Stock Road up through Philippi. So big volume of traffic plus some restrictions. It's all to do with My City Bus Works. It is pretty heavy, and indication it's going to be a busy Tuesday to Cape Town. The N1's already full of traffic between Belleville and Sable Road at Century City. The N2 inbound already backlogging from the airport through towards Mowbray Main Road. Make sure you got some time to get through what looks like a busy Tuesday around Cape Town. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Good morning, Zai. Day 2, you said, of a million.
Yes.
Day 2 of a million. I like that. So last weekend, the focus was on the Springboks. Now all focus shifts to Bafana Bafana. They've got a big task ahead, don't they?
Yeah, and I think Coach Hugo Bruges, he's known, a bit for his careful approach when it comes to his players and their readiness. And you'll see he's now not called Percy Tau. So we'll have to wait and see. And he says that this is because Tau is not in the right state of mind. Now, we're not sure what exactly that means, but we do know that Coach Bruce is just making sure that if Percy Tau does return, he's fully prepared to make a real impact. And this is when Bafana take on Uganda at Orlando Stadium come this Friday, and South Sudan 4 days later from home. Bruce now will rely on goals from players like Ikram Reyners, Elias Mokwena, Lyle Foster and Relebohile Mofokeng. Now, Coach Bruce also believes that 6 points from the first two matches of Group K, which also includes a match against Congo, are non-negotiable. He says it's important the team has a good start on the journey to Morocco next year.
If you have a good start, and a good start for me is 6 on 6. I don't think we can be happy if we shouldn't have 6 on 6. If we can achieve that, then you have the two key games in October against Congo, and in the best of all, you can already qualify at that moment. So that means let's try to win those two games. We have the quality for that. We have the confidence for that. But that doesn't mean that we have to underestimate our opponents from Friday and for next week, Tuesday.
That's Bafana coach Hugo Bruges on the morning brief. Now, there will also be a limit on ticket prices that home clubs can charge visiting fans in the three main European men's club competitions organised by UEFA. Beginning with the current season, the maximum ticket prices for away fans will be set at 1,184 for the Champions League and 789 Rand for the Europa League and 394 Rand for the Conference League. UEFA will further reduce ticket prices in the future as this season introduces a new tournament format featuring 36 teams in a single large league, resulting in more matches. Tennis action, Iga Swiatek was tied at 4-all with the number 16 seed Ludmila Samsonova before grabbing 7 straight games en route to winning 6-4, 6-1. She'll face Jessica Pegula in the quarterfinal. Pegula had a 6-4, 6-2 victory over Diana Schneider. Here's Pegula.
I got to hit with a left-handed hitter yesterday and warm up with one today, which always helps. It's just hard because it's a different spin than you're used to seeing. Things kind of go the opposite direction. So it's definitely an adjustment. I think definitely when I start the match, I try to play those percentages of which way the ball's kind of going, and then maybe change it a little bit if I feel like I'm kind of onto it or I get a rhythm. But it's definitely, at least for me, it's definitely a little bit different.
And finally, former world number one Andy Murray has laid into the US Open organizers, describing the scheduling at the Grand Slam tournament a total mess. And this after a women's match ended at 2:15 in the morning. China's 7th seed Zhang Qiwen repeated her Olympic Games gold medal victory over Donna Vekic of Croatia with her 7-6, 4-6, 6-2 victory, setting a new benchmark for a late finish to a women's singles tie at Flushing Meadows. That's where we wrap up here on the morning brief. More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zaikan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Straight to Ndauling Lechela. Ndauling, good morning. I see that you decided to not join me on day 2 in the studio, but it's all right. We'll let it go. We'll live with it. You are watching local factory activity, and concerningly, you're saying that it's fallen back into contractionary territory.
Good morning, Thulas, and that's right. Now, really bad news for the manufacturing sector. Confidence in that industry sinking back into the red. According to the APSA PMI, the index fell 8.8 points to 43.6 in August. This from growth in July that lifted sentiment. However, that did not last long. Now, this was the 5th time in 8 months that the reading edged into contractionary territory in 2024, and is mainly due to high volatility in the sector in a year of political uncertainty, high but slowing inflation, elevated borrowing costs, and sluggish global and domestic demand. Now, zooming in on the print, both the business activity index and new sales orders declined. This comes as exports and demand for orders took a knock. Now, the latest Purchasing Managers Index indicates that the economy is still growing at a slow pace. However, if the SARB reduces interest rates this month and inflation continues to ease, it could provide a much needed boost to the economy in the final months of 2024.
And you're also watching new vehicle sales, and those are also down in the month of August.
That's right, not boding well for the economy and just the performance of the economy in the third quarter. We're clearly seeing, a sour start to August in the data prints. It did seem like the new vehicle sales market was recovering, ticking up 1.5% in July. However, that could not be sustained as sales fell 4.9% last month. According to the National Association of Automotive Manufacturers of South Africa, new vehicle sales dropped to 43,588 last month, a decline from 45,854 in August 2023. This after a promising year-on-year increase in July. Hopes were high that the market decline had ended, but August numbers were mixed. This comes as the current economic environment weighs on consumers, with high interest rates just making it unbearable to secure car financing. Surprisingly, though, passenger car sales rose 3.1%, but light commercial vehicle sales like bakkies and minibuses fell 21.5%, which then dragged the overall market down. Looking at passenger vehicle market, the passenger vehicle market, Toyota retained its market leadership as South Africa's most popular brand last month, selling about 10,656 new vehicles, with VW in second place and Suzuki in third.
All right, those are interesting stats, especially when you drill down to that level of detail, talking about passenger vehicles being up, but commercial vehicles, and the minibuses and the likes, those sales being down. You're also watching, Dowling, the markets. Give us a roundup of Asian markets, the US overnight and the JSE.
So trading was quite thin yesterday as US markets were closed due to a public holiday. In Asia, those stocks started the day pretty mixed, mostly lower, with Hong Kong stocks taking the biggest beating, trading close to a 1-week low as investors digested weak corporate earnings amid the slowdown in China's growth. Back at home, markets kicking off the week on a downbeat note, with markets in the red. The all-share closed trade yesterday 0.3% lower. This was fueled by losses from the financial 15, which edged down 0.45%. We are seeing a wait-and-see approach from traders here ahead of the U.S. Open. On the currency front, though, not much action playing out there. The rand has remained quite steady under the 18 rand mark. It's currently sitting at 17.88 to the dollar.
Right, Dowling, we'll be back with you with more updates in the next hour.
So why should I use We Buy Cars if I want to sell my vehicle?
Because We Buy Cars buys cars.
But will I get the right price?
Of course. We Buy Cars buys thousands of vehicles and knows exactly what every vehicle is worth. Their buyers deliver exceptional service and pay you immediately.
And how do I know what they'll pay for my vehicle?
It's easy. Visit webuycars.co.za or use the We Buy Cars app. Follow the simple steps and voila, you'll know your car's value in no time. We Buy Cars. Quick, easy, the best.
The Warriors want to start their AFCON qualifier with maximum points. However, Harambee Stars want something delightful for the Kenyans. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Kenya versus Zimbabwe on Wednesday, 4 September at 3 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag the morning brief.
Good morning. It's good to have you with us on the morning brief here on SAFM. Now, we started this morning with a bit of breaking news coming out of KwaZulu-Natal overnight, and that has to do with the killing of 6 suspects in a shootout with police overnight. We're joined now by the SAPS KwaZulu-Natal spokesperson, Colonel Robert Nechiunda. Good morning, Colonel. So tell us the circumstances under which the suspects died during that operation by police overnight.
Good morning and thank you for having us. Police were following up on a number of suspects who were linked with several murders which occurred over the weekend You will recall that on Friday afternoon, there were 3 people who were shot and killed next to a tuck shop in the Ministerial Road in Hamasdale. Then in that incident, an 11-year-old girl was also shot on the legs after she was caught by a stray bullet. Then on Sunday night, there were 5 guys who were seated next to the road. They were drinking alcohol when suspects approached them and forced them to lie on the road before shooting them on the back of their heads. 4 of them died and 1 is still in hospital with a gunshot injury to the head. Then police followed up information and just before midnight, we went to an area in Newlands East, but the information was not that concrete, but we collected further intelligence which pointed us to an apartment in South Beach Avenue in the Point area of Durban, where when police approached the suspects in the apartment, they fired shots at the police. Police retaliated and a shootout ensued, which left 6 suspects shot and fatally wounded.
How confident are you of the intelligence and investigative work that you had done, that these were the suspects that were linked to the murders that you were seeking them for?
The suspects that were fatally wounded, we knew who we were looking for. Police were not guessing. And even after the shootout, it was confirmed that these are the members of the group that were committing crimes such as murders and extortions in the area of Durban.
And this obviously is concerning, Colonel Nechiunda, in terms of the number of shootouts with suspects by, media statistics and keeping count, no less than 30. And in fact, now the number is even higher with the latest, suspects that have been killed. How concerned are you that the perception will be out there that you are basically, and I think you've heard this question before, that this is becoming a regular pattern that suspects get killed in KwaZulu-Natal?
We are more worried that there are innocent South Africans who are being killed every day by people who think that they are above the law, people who disregard the law, who disregard human life. They go out on a killing spree and we do not know if they believe that they are untouchable. That's why maybe when police confront them, they try to fight their way through. We are concerned that many police officers' lives are put under danger by suspects who shoot at police officers, because in a shootout, it's a matter of life and death. There are incidents where we lose police officers, some of them get injured. So we are worried that there are shootouts. We are worried that there are people who are killing others. We are worried that there are people who are shooting at police officers.
And very quickly and lastly, Colonel Nechiunda, in terms of these suspects, was this the 6 that died? Was that the total number of suspects you were seeking in connection with with those incidents, or are there more suspects that you are still looking for?
We believe that there are more, because even the apartment that they were in, a holiday apartment, was paid for by somebody else who was not part of the 6. So we're still looking for him. Maybe he will lead us to more gang members, because the issue of extortion has seen a rise of late, and we believe that these are not the only 6 suspects that are part of the syndicate.
All right, thank you for that update. That's Colonel Robert Nechiunda, who speaks on behalf of the SAPS in KwaZulu-Natal, talking to us about that breaking story of 6 more suspects having been shot and killed in a shootout with police overnight.
Thulasizwe Simelane on SAFM.
So something in the food is making children ill in parts of Gauteng, and the provincial departments of health and education are growing seriously concerned. The provincial health department is sounding the alarm over what it says is a spike in food poisoning cases, especially in townships, informal settlements and hostels. The health department says at least 10 children have died since February this year from the at least 200 suspected food poisoning incidents reported within that period. Let's now talk to the Gauteng Health Department's Acting Director for Public Health and Food Safety, Christina Mnisi. Ms. Mnisi, good morning. Thank you for talking to us. 4 children died last week of suspected food poisoning. It's the latest of many incidents. What has reached? What has led you to this point where you are sounding the alarm and warning parents to be cautious, and I guess educators as well to be cautious about what food their children consume, especially around schools?
Morning, Thulasizwe, and morning, listeners at home. As the Department of Health, looking at the high numbers of cases that have been reported to us, the 203 cases is just from February, and the 10 deaths for this case is for the past 2 months. So at this moment, we can see that these figures are figures that have been reported to us, but there might be more cases on the ground. As the Department of Health, when we see these numbers going up, especially the past few months, we feel it's high time for us to warn the family members, the community members, and also to collaborate with schools to say there is a problem, because we have seen that some of these kids that have consumed pesticides, they have consumed them at school on their way to school. So, which we feel like the Department of Education plays a major role. So for now, we are collaborating with them, and we are also doing awarenesses in the community, and also in the community within our township and hostels, and also engaging the Department of Education. We are also not leaving the Department of Agriculture, because they are the ones that authorize these pesticides to be utilized.
Did I hear you correctly? You're mentioning pesticides. You mentioning pesticides, I take it, is informed by what you've observed from the pattern of these incidents, because as we said, it's not these are the latest, are not the first incidents that you've dealt with. Is it a pattern that pesticides are involved?
Currently, as people go to health facilities, they report that they've consumed food. So when we do our investigation, we have identified that there is an element of pesticides like Retex, like organophosphate. They normally call it in the location step 1. They normally use these pesticides for killing rodents or pests around the house.
Sure, that is seriously concerning. So with that, having observed that, what interventions are you putting in place then? Because I imagine, you being responsible for public health and food safety, by now there should be interventions that have taken place to try and keep these pesticides out of the food chain.
Okay, well, we have implemented 3 programs at the moment. We have implemented the township informal settlements and hostel, which we call it a TISH, where we are doing awarenesses each and every month within the Gauteng province. We've got these awarenesses where we are educating community members about the chemical safety, how to use the pesticides, and how to store these pesticides. Because these kids, like a 3-year-old, how do they access this? And we have also involved the Department of Education. We are engaging with them because we feel there are so many contributing factors that make these kids to consume the pesticides. Because we have seen that some of them, they've done it intentionally. And we have already started with blitz. As I'm talking to you yesterday, we had a blitz in Thulasizwe, where we're visiting all the spaza shops and also area taxi ranks, just to identify, bring this awareness with all necessary stakeholders. We had another awareness in Rudaport yesterday, where we were going from point A to point B, trying to engage with the community and try to recall those pesticides that are illegally sold in public.
Lastly, Ms. Mnisi, and very quickly, I'm sure you hear the narrative coming up from time to time whenever these incidents happen that tends to link these incidents to quote-unquote fake foods being sold in spaza shops, etc. You are aware of that. And what are your investigations telling you about that element? Is there something to that narrative, or is it just a matter of public perceptions not founded on any facts?
When they report these cases to us, they indicate that they've consumed food from the spaza shops. But what we have seen that there is a lack of non-compliances is there in the spaza shops. Some of them, they do not really meet the hygiene standards, which might be a contributing factor. But the team for environmental practitioners, they are visiting these spaza shops on weekly basis to monitor compliance, to ensure that everybody that is selling food has been trained. But the issue of the spaza shops, it is coming up there and there, but we are monitoring very closely.
All right, thank you for this.
We even take the batch number, whatever that they've consumed, and try to trace it back to the manufacturer.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time this morning. That is the Gauteng Health Department's Acting Director for Public Health and Food Safety, Christina Mnisi.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Busy in Pretoria this morning, coming in through Capital Park, Paul Kruger onto Trow Street. Very big backlogs if you're coming through from Pretoria North or from Mayville. Quite a queue that you might want to avoid. Breakdown at Galuli, so the N12 and R24 region from Ekurhuleni heavy. And if you're driving in from the Vaal this morning, this collision between Klip River Drive and Swatcopies Road, still backlogging traffic on 59 quite heavily. You might want to avoid that. Off-ramp at Klip River Drive and hit some alternative routes. And there's queuing pressure just north of Crossmere this morning. The N1 up through Eldos towards the N12 Potch Highway. That's an unusual queue. You normally get through there okay this time of morning, but not today. We'll keep an eye on that one for you. Coming out of Pietermaritzburg, on your way to Durban, a breakdown at Umlas Road has been cleared, so that backlog's got through. Quite heavy Tweedy Hill up in towards Isipingo for motorists that are leaving the Monsamtoti and South Coast area. And Cape Town today, indications are it is set for a busy Tuesday's trip into work through the traffic. The N1 from Belleville, Plattekloof Hill, if you like, right through to sort of Marine Drive is heavy. The M5's backed up from Parkwood right through to Maitland. The N2 queuing from the airport through to Hospital Bend. There's pressure on the M3 already from Constantia up towards Paradise Road as you come slowly through the Bishop's Court area. And Viking Way really busy as well as queues coming through from Elsie's. That's quite a big backlog. Bottom of the casino area, Viking Way moving westbound into Jake's Curvell Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
So Sharon at officing was telling me the way drip is so expensive these days. She's now waiting for her old clothes to come back into fashion. I say, Joza, while you're waiting, why not let your money do the things in a Nedbank Just Invest account where you can get your money after 24 hours notice? Oganchani voiceman.
In Njalo, Mabel, you can earn up to 8.75% interest. Anyone can open an investment account via the Money app in under 2 minutes. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. Promo rates apply.
Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Play Powerball for an estimated 78 million rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 22 million rand this Tuesday. That's right, 100 million rand in total estimated Powerball and Powerball Plus jackpots are waiting to be won. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529 hash for USSD. Panda, Pusha, Play. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly. Ituba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
Call Thulasizwe now. 086 000 2032.
All right, the Ideas Refinery is open. Let's put your ideas on the table and let's stress test them. Let's start with Wonga, who is in Matatiele. Wonga, you want to talk about load shedding. What about load shedding? We've not had it for many, many days. We've lost count.
Hey, good morning. Good morning to SAFM listeners. Many people have lost count, but now I haven't lost count because from the 7th of June this year until now, we are experiencing load shedding. You get an SMS, maybe I can read it to you just now.
Please do.
It gives you ESCOM reference, then the numbers. ESCOM is aware that you are experiencing a fault, and then there's an account number. This is currently being attended to. We get that every single day between 5 in the morning and the electricity will be back at 7. The following day will be 5 in the evening and then 7 p.m. every single day. So this 150 days, unfortunately I've never seen anything. For me, as I'm saying to you, from the 7th of June until today, I can even put this SMS, just screenshot it and then put it to your WhatsApp on this SMS.
Would appreciate that.
We've got a problem. Every day, you know that when you have to wake up to rush to work, let's say you have to leave at 7, you've got no choice. By 4 o'clock, you have to wake up.
Sure.
If you need to do something between 5 in the evening and 7 p.m., you have to either do that after 7 p.m. or before 5.
Sure.
We get that every single day. There's no weekend. There's no Monday.
Right.
Since the 7th of June.
Heard you, Wonga. Please do share that SMS with us.
This 150, where does it apply?
Right. We will follow up with ESCOM on that issue tomorrow. That is Wonga in Matatiele. They're saying that there is load shedding by another name in the area where he lives. Let's go to the next caller, and it's Tabo in Saldanha Bay. Tabo, you want to talk about Portia Derby, I imagine, in light of the results from Transnet?
Yes, especially morning and morning to your listeners.
Good morning.
Yes, I want to speak about that lady because the level of distraction that she brought to Transnet is ignored. The level of distraction. I remember there was a time where there was that lady from SAA who was declared delinquent, because they said she didn't perform. But Portia Derby, nobody talks about her. All we talk about is how Transnet is failing, but we forget to mention the reasons why.
So you hold her particularly responsible for the situation that Transnet finds itself in?
Yes, I was inside Transnet when she came in. I know what Transnet was before, and I know what it is after her. You understand the decision making, the level of incompetence, and then if you now start going the what you call this, we say no, she was brought in for the distraction of Transnet so that we can give the private sector competition to come in. That's what other people say.
Sure.
But now I just wanted your help to find out how can I go about declaring her a delinquent. Like a normal man like me, so.
Okay, Tabo, let's leave it for now because I'm at the top of the hour with news. I do undertake that I will come back to you in terms of how the processes work, in terms of the Companies Act, in as far as directors are concerned, and getting them declared delinquent directors. That is Tabo. They're weighing in on the issue of Transnet. It's 1 minute after 7, a bit late for news, and Ann Musa standing by.
In our top stories, police minister to address extortion threats in the country, and Netanyahu accused of not doing enough to secure a hostage deal. Good morning. The debate on extortion in the country will take centre stage in the National Assembly today. Police Minister Senzo Mchunu is expected to deliver a ministerial statement in the House. When he recently released the quarterly crime stats, Mchunu described extortion for so-called protection fees as a disturbing criminal phenomenon. Mercedes Percent reports.
Allegations of extortion have been making more daily headlines recently. Some doctors, schools and small businesses are just amongst the few who allegedly became victims of extortionists who are demanding a so-called protection fee. This criminal activity is expected to come under intense debate in the Assembly later today. Police Minister Senzo Mkunu's statement will outline the actions taken by the police to deal with the threat posed by those committing acts of extortion in South Africa. Members of the National Assembly will have an opportunity to debate Mkunu's statement.
The Trade, Industry and Competition Minister Park Tau says he believes trade relations with China can be expanded further. China is South Africa's biggest trading partner. Tau was speaking to the SABC in China during President Cyril Ramaphosa's state visit to Beijing.
In principle, agreement that we should improve the quality of trade with China is an important part of the visit. We've agreed that we need to focus now on manufactured goods and enhancing export of manufactured goods from South Africa into the Chinese market. We've presented a list of 98 products that include both primary and manufactured goods that we would be trading with China, and it's part of the agreement that we're presenting.
The Cradock 4 inquest has been postponed to June next year after the Gqeberha High Court in the Eastern Cape heard 2 applications over who should be responsible for the legal costs of the inquest. It was expected to start yesterday and run until the 20th of September, but was postponed due to the 2 applications filed by the State Attorney and Mbulelo Goniwe, the nephew of the late Matthew Goniwe. The start of the inquest will coincide with the 40th anniversary of the Cradock 4 deaths. Meanwhile, the Eastern Cape Director of Public Prosecutions, Barry Madolo, says he's confident the state will be willing to cover the legal costs.
This state, I think, at some point will assist with the funding, but it's a sort of a longish process because they have to approach the state attorney. Then from the state attorney must go to the Solicitor General. From the Solicitor General, then they go to the Minister. So, but looking at the nature of these proceedings, I can't put my head on the block, but I can say I think the Minister may be amenable to assist.
Further afield, and finally, the U.S. President Joe Biden says he does not believe the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is doing enough to close a long-anticipated hostage for ceasefire deal with Hamas. Biden spoke to reporters on his way into a meeting with the U.S. negotiating team that followed the murder of hostages American-Israeli Hirsch Goldberg-Pollen and 5 others in a tunnel in Rafah in Gaza. A readout of that meeting says Biden expressed his devastation and outrage at the murders and reaffirmed the importance of holding Hamas leaders accountable. Sharon Bryce-Peace reports.
During the meeting, President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris received an update from the U.S. negotiating team on the status of the bridging proposal outlined by the United States, Qatar and Egypt. U.S. media report that Biden could make a final take-it-or-leave-it ceasefire proposal to both Israel and Hamas this week. Netanyahu is facing massive protests and a general strike at home over the lack of a hostage deal, with many Israelis holding him responsible for not securing an agreement sooner and thus sparing the lives of just the latest hostages to die in captivity.
Recapping the top story, the debate on extortion in the country will take center stage in the National Assembly today. Police Minister Senzo Mkunu is expected to deliver a ministerial statement in the House. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still slow coming in from the south up into Joburg. Got 2 heavy queues to work through. One on the N1 north of Crossmere. Big queues up towards the N12 Potch Highway on the N1 north, and the collision between Clipper Drive and Swat Copies still holding up traffic on the R59 north as well. Breakdown on the N1 south at New Road. That's pushing traffic all the way back to Brockfontein. The route that is a high crash zone in the mornings, the N14, claiming another crash victim there. It's a collision between the R55 Pretoria West exit and Brockfontein. So if you're on the N14, A15 coming from Lanseria from Diepsloot on your way to Pretoria. Again, another morning of queues to work through that. Durban, pretty heavy at Tweedy Hill on the way in towards Isipingo and Prospect. And Cape Town, I was just looking at all the sort of the overhead view of the highways. It's really busy this morning. If you're not in the Cape Town traffic yet, don't leave it too much longer. All your highways and some of the byways looking absolutely busy for a Tuesday morning. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's rugby. The Springbok captain Siya Kolisi's fitness for Saturday's test remains uncertain after that potential cheekbone fracture. And we have soccer. Bafana coach Hugo Bruges explains why he leaves star attacker Percy Tau out of the squad. All this and more at around 7:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
8 minutes after 7 on this Tuesday, the 3rd of September 2024, live from the Citadel of Broadcasting in South Africa and across the African continent, the SABC's Radio Park building in Auckland Park. We are SAFM. We are 88 years old and we are leading the conversation. You're listening to The Morning Brief and I'm Thulasizwe Simelane. It's good to have you with us. Coming up in this hour, we'll focus in the next few minutes on the results coming out of Transnet. You and I know how critical Transnet is to our economy firing and all these efforts that we're talking about to turn our economy around. We're going nowhere slowly if we are not able to move, to have that logistics pipeline moving the way that it should. Yesterday, Transnet coming out with its results. We'll put them under the spotlight in a moment. You've been hearing the buzzword, and I worry about buzzwords because they tend to sanitize and we end up normalizing the abnormal. Construction mafias, extortion syndicates. We end up being able to just mouth it off without taking in what it means. What it means is that in many parts of this country, we are under siege. We are absolutely under siege from people that are demanding so-called protection fees. Criminals, really, demanding fees to protect you from themselves, stalling projects, and demanding these protection fees. So we'll have a conversation with the KwaZulu-Natal MEC for Public Works, Martin Meyer, and that conversation coming up within the next 20 or so minutes, the next 15 or so minutes, rather, here on SAFM. And lots more to cover, but we will start, of course, with Transnet and that conversation in just a moment.
Bafana are taking on Uganda at Orlando Stadium on Friday, 6 September 2024 at 6 p.m. This AFCON 2025 qualifier is the beginning of a journey to improve on the bronze medal from 2023. Gates open at 3 p.m. and tickets are available at Ticket Pro. 60 Rand for adults, 30 Rand for children under 12, scholars in uniform and students with student cards. A family ticket at 140 Rand allows 2 adults and 2 children. Come dressed in support of Bafana to win prizes. If you are not at the stadium, catch the game on SABC3 at 6 p.m. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. For more details, visit safa.net and Bafana on X and TikTok.
37-year-old Debucho got a really great deal on his car insurance premium from Outsurance. He pays an amazing 762 Rand per month to insure his white 2018 Ford Figo Ambiente. He now has extra cash every month to go out for a meal with his friends. Get an Outsurance quote today. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754 now. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag The Morning Brief.
Hey folks, it's good to have you with us here on The Morning Brief. You will allow me and indulge me, I hope, because I'm still getting used to just the splendor of the sun rising over Johannesburg. I've heard talk of Johannesburg being the biggest urban jungle in the world, man-made urban jungle in the world. I don't know for a fact if that is a fact, but I've heard that claim being made. And you get to take it in from where we are broadcasting from here at Radio Park at the SABC. Nevertheless, I do have to move on because I do tend to indulge myself, and then we end up running into problems with Mdu and the producers on the other side. So let's get to this story then. Few state-owned enterprises are as critical for the country's economy as Transnet is. As we've seen in the past few years, when Transnet's network is dysfunctional, the chokehold over the country's economy is devastating. At some point last year, there were estimates of inefficiencies in rail costing the economy up to 1 billion rand a day, and losses from the inefficient ports amounting to about 200 million rand a day. Well, a lot of effort has been put into trying to fix Transnet and the country's logistics system broadly. But yesterday, Transnet reporting financial losses amounting to 7.3 billion rand for the 2023-2024 financial year. Let's bring into the conversation Professor Emeritus of Industrial Engineering at Stellenbosch University, Jan Havenga. Prof, good morning. Thank you for your time. So, there's been quite a lot of work that has been put into trying to get Transnet back on its track, but it seems right now that is not bearing fruit, and Transnet is blaming the losses largely to third-party claims.
Yes, that is true. There's a lot of effort that's been made, and I'm also saying that since the changes that we've had towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year, with new management at Transnet, that is working very hard and it's trying their best to fix this problem. There's a huge amount of effort that's gone into this. Also from the National Logistics Crisis Committee, from Business Leadership South Africa that got involved. A lot of people are involved in this, and the new management of Transnet is trying really hard. But in a certain sense, you've also framed it correctly by saying the loss is actually completely immaterial. If you listen to the figures that you've quoted yourself, if you begin to talk about 300 to 400 billion rand a year that the economy loses because of a dysfunctional Transnet, if Transnet made a 20 billion rand loss last year, but was not dysfunctional, did everything that it was supposed to do, that would have been wonderful for our economy. And this is part of the problem, that the focus on Transnet's profitability is actually, in a certain sense, wrong. If you think about it, included in Transnet, for instance, is a rail infrastructure authority. Now, that rail infrastructure authority is comparable to Sunrail. Nobody is asking what was Sunrail's profit last year. Nobody is asking or saying anything about Sunrail's various subsidies that they receive from government, etc. We must think about this differently. We must think about the different portions of Transnet and how they can be fixed. And the problem here is if you add them all together and you add to that the state captured debt that they have to carry, it is actually an impossible problem to solve as it stands. So my hats off to the current government management. They are trying very hard, but I think it's an unsolvable problem in this current structure. It needs to be restructured. It just needs to be.
So part of the narrative about the reasons behind the losses made is that this relates to third-party claims around the Sasol Total, litigation that has been on the go. Can those third-party claims be significant enough to hit Transnet in this kind of way?
It sounds terrible to say, but it's actually a very small part of the problem. If you just look at the numbers, 300 to 400 billion rand damage to the economy, 7 billion rand loss, that could have been, if it wasn't for those claims, maybe 3 or 4 billion rand loss. We're talking about very, very small numbers here. These are just, I think, distractions to the core story. The core story here is the fact that we don't have 200 million tons throughput on rail. And the core story here is that our ports are not functioning efficiently enough yet. And the reason for that is, although people are trying very hard, there's not enough funding to actually fix it. That's the core story. The few billion here and there about the third-party claim is not what this is about. What this is about is we need to fix our railway and we need to fix our ports. And the people currently trying to do that do not have enough resources to do that. And that needs to be sorted out.
So Transnet talking about 122 billion rand in capital investment in terms of the plan that they've tabled, and you know there's been a lot of focus on capital expenditure and investment in the infrastructure on the side of Transnet. In terms of those plans being implemented, but also how they translate to improvements in the efficiencies. What are we seeing there? I mean, I remember those long queues leading up to areas around Richards Bay, the force majeure declarations of the past few years, and the situation from time to time at the port in Durban and other areas, and the corporate sector saying that they are now having to move their goods, including vehicles for export, have to put them on trucks and take them to the port themselves. What is the improvement that we are seeing around that situation?
In broad terms, there will be improvements in broad terms, and the people are on the right track. That is absolutely correct, but it's probably 50% too little. We probably need another 100 billion. And because we don't have it, and because Transnet is not structured correctly, we're still going to have problems going forward. And that is the broad problem. We need to restructure Transnet to the extent where the railway infrastructure company stands separate from Transnet, the same way that Sunrail is separate. And that infrastructure company needs to be properly funded. The debt needs to be taken away. Because if you just think about it at the moment, Transnet pays more than R1 billion a month on debt. Now, that is money that should go towards infrastructure, should go towards maintenance, it should go towards running the business, but it actually just goes towards debt. Now, once we do that properly, we will be better off. So I'm very glad about the focus that's given to infrastructure spending, and I also know that it's probably spent in the right way, in the right places, but it is definitely not enough. And part of the problem is the debt. A huge chunk of the problem is the debt.
So within that context then, how important is this loan of 5 billion rand from the New Development Bank, also known as the BRICS Bank?
Let's be honest about it. It is there to keep the lights on. If you think about it, the figure I've just given you, 5 billion rand is 3.5 months worth of interest payments. So you can take the 5 billion and you can fix a bit of infrastructure, and then some of the future income that you get, you use to pay off debt. Or you can just take the 5 billion and pay your interest for the next 3.5 months, and then you can use your cash flow to actually fix your infrastructure. It's just not enough. That is the problem. Transnet doesn't need more debt. It needs help. I think to some extent, if I remember correctly, Michelle Phillips said that in her presentation. It doesn't need more debt. It needs help. And that is the problem here.
Lastly, Prof. Havenga, just your sense of the amount of responsibility that the previous leadership at Transnet need to bear. One of our callers, Thabo, just before 7, placing the blame for where we are squarely at the doorstep of the previous leadership and mentioning the former leadership of Portia Derby and others. Your sense of the amount of responsibility they should shoulder?
I just want to say one thing. If you go back very far back, there's a lot of fingerprints on this murder weapon. But and I'm not going to spend time going that far back. But if I go as far back as the state capture management, they caused the current hole that we have in the balance sheet of Transnet. The management that followed had a lot of responsibility to bear in terms of what they were supposed to do. They were supposed to protect skills, they were supposed to prioritize infrastructure spending, doing things like that. But what we rather saw is a toxic culture, and we did not see things being fixed. We did not see restructuring the way that it should have happened. So yes, I do think that the previous management of Transnet, before the current management, did cause a lot of damage. There's no doubt about that. I'm quite sure of it.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and insights this morning. That's Jan Havenga, who is Emeritus Professor of Industrial Engineering at Stellenbosch University and also the Director of the GAIN Group. Obviously, we will need to give the previous leadership of Transnet a right of reply, having heard them being criticized in the way that they have this morning.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. It's Elimination Week and the bottom 6 must bake their ultimate cookie and milkshake pairing. It's a match made in heaven, but will they perfect their flavor combinations under pressure? Take part in the weekly viewers competition and stand a chance of winning a classic stand mixer to the value of 10,000 Rand. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
Comoros and the Gambia have a huge clash for 90 minutes in the AFCON qualifier. Both nations are optimistic for the significant 3 points. Yet, the question remains, who wants it the most? This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Comoros up against the Gambia on Wednesday, 4 September at 5 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Play Powerball for an estimated 78 million Rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 22 million Rand this Tuesday. That's right, 100 million Rand in total estimated Powerball and Powerball Plus jackpots are waiting to be won. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529 hash for USSD. Panda, Pusha, Play. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly. Ituba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
All right, conscious of time, let's bring in the MSc of Public Works in KwaZulu-Natal. We have been talking about the situation with construction mafias and the hold that they seem to have over construction projects. Well, the MSc has met with various sectors, including the hospitality, civil engineering, Black Business Federation, over their concerns and made certain commitments around that. MSc, good morning and thank you for your time. So just tell us about your engagement with these various groupings and stakeholders around the impact of the so-called construction mafias.
Good morning, and thank you for a very sunny Durban. Yes, I think what I've learned from all these engagements is that there's a definite strong movement within KwaZulu-Natal now to act together in unison against the so-called construction mafia. Groups like the Black Business Federation has now very clearly and strongly came out against criminality by these construction mafia and distanced himself from them. And other sectors of the built industry has now also shown that they're willing to work with government to find solutions so that we can all speak with one voice against this scourge that is troubling our province.
Would you blame me if I said we've heard it all before, MSc, that that there is an issue? You can, in fact, the earliest indications of this being elevated from something that communities, that business people in localities talk about to a national issue was in President Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address a couple of years ago. We've been talking about the construction mafias, but people continue to be terrified and be terrorized by these groupings.
I think there is a few differences, and no, I wouldn't blame you at all for that, but I think there's a few differences now. Firstly, we're seeing a strong political will to deal with this matter now, which was lacking in the past. The unity government in KwaZulu-Natal has come out almost fist swinging on this matter, and we have strong backing from the national government with people like Minister McPherson, the Minister of Police, and the President himself. So I think that's the first difference, is that there's now a very strong political will to deal with this matter that might have been quite lacking in the past. Secondly, there's been a disjunction in the past between the private sector in the built industry and government, and we see that many private contractors said it's just easier to pay off these guys than actually stand up against them, and now they're willing to stand with government and say no, we can no longer tolerate it, and if government is going to stand up, then they're also willing to stand up. So I think there's now much more unity in voice across the private and public sector against this, and then we see this in action. We had the arrest just outside of Maritzburg 2 weeks ago. They've They are now being held in jail, pending their court appearance, which is also a much stronger performance by the NPA than we've seen before with construction mafia. So clearly we're also now seeing it in action, that SAPS, the justice sector, and all other role players in this are now willing to say up to here and no further, and now we are seeing action.
And there seems to be, my understanding is that there seems to be the element of unutilized buildings. What's the role of those in exacerbating this situation with construction mafias and other so-called unsavory occupants of these buildings?
Yeah, we know they have a problem in the inner cities and even the inner towns, of course, in Natal and across the country. And as the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, we have decided we cannot be part of the problem. We need to be part of the solution. So if we want to revitalize, especially Msunduzi, whose inner city is in a bit of a sorry state, as well as eThekwini, where we need to bring tourists back to the city, then we can't have bad buildings belonging to the government. So we've done a full audit of buildings. It's still ongoing for the outer parts of the province, but we pretty much completed for eThekwini and for Msunduzi, for Pietermaritzburg. And we now, in the next 2 weeks, we will be launching a couple of serious interventions in these buildings. We will either utilize them for something else. There's a couple of buildings we are engaging with role players to see if we can change them into student accommodation. That there is a shortage within the city of eThekwini. Or where needed, we can sell them. So we are looking at strong measures we can take to make sure that buildings that is right now bringing down the image of the inner city areas will be revitalized and then actually will play a positive role within the image of the cities in KwaZulu-Natal.
But I'd like you to draw the connection directly, MEC, if you can. Yeah. Are you seeing a correlation between unutilized buildings, some of them belonging to yourselves as a department, and some of these activities of extortionists?
So we've had cases in places like Umlazi, where we have abandoned buildings, criminal elements involved in hijack these buildings and take them and use them for whatever their own needs or purposes are, quite often illegal. And then in the inner cities areas, we saw the raid led by the Premier himself a couple of days ago, which also shown that many buildings are being used by drug dealers. We had illegal foreigners living in some of those buildings. They found people that were doing all kinds of illegal things there, printed money and all other types of not so legal things. These buildings were then used by these activities. We know the construction mafia is not just focused on that. They're a large criminal network that's got their fingers in many criminal pies. Yeah. And there's some different links there as well. And that's why we just want to cut off the space for these organized crime syndicates to function within our province.
MEC, lastly, just give us an update on the situation. My understanding is that you've also received direct threats to your life?
Yeah, no, there has been some threats, but that's to be expected. As I've said before, I'm no more different than any other person in KwaZulu-Natal. That when we go to work every morning, you have to be very aware of your surroundings, because unfortunately, criminality and crime is a big issue in our province, and it's a responsibility of this unity government to come together and reduce crime and make all people in South Africa safer in this province. So while there has been some threats, I'm not any more special than any other person within the province.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for your time this morning. That is the MEC of Public Works in KwaZulu-Natal. That's Martin Meyer, weighing in on the issue of the so-called construction mafias, extortionists, and the likes. And a sobering indictment there, as the MEC was talking about threats to his own life. You'll know, of course, that people who serve in government get a level of protection, a certain level of protection. If threats are being directed at them, what of you and I? It's gone 7:30. Let's check in with Ann Musa at the news desk.
Good morning. In the headlines, 6 suspects who were wanted in connection with a number of murders and extortion have been killed in a shootout with police at a flat on the Durban beachfront late last night. The debate on extortion in the country will take centre stage in the National Assembly today. Police Minister Senzo Mchunu is expected to deliver a ministerial statement in the House. And the Credok 4 inquest has been postponed to June next year after the Gqeberha High Court in the Eastern Cape heard 2 applications over who should be responsible for the legal costs of the inquest. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Looking better now, the R59 coming in from the Vaal, that earlier crash near Swakoppies, which had everything backed up clear. The N1 north after Crossmere up towards the Potchefstroom highway split stays heavy. Normally a queue the other side of that towards the Deep Cliff, but this morning it's backlogging into that N12 Potch split there. The N13 Midrand starting to ease a little bit. A breakdown at New Roads being cleared. It stays busy, but not as heavy as it was. Queues from Brockfontein. And another day, another crash on the N14 Krugersdorp Highway. Literally one a day this time of morning. It's in that usual spot between the R55 Pretoria West exit and the Brockfontein interchange. Again, another busy run through to Pretoria. Durban bound, well, both ways around the N3 corridor, Linfield Park, Umlas Road. We can confirm a breakdown on your way to Durban by Umlas Road. That's heavy coming down from Linfield Park, and there's a backlog from Umlas Road heading towards Pietermaritzburg up towards the Linfield Park area as well. Quite a major delay coming out of Hillcrest on your way to Kloof. It's a crash near Maytime Stores. The M13's badly backed up. Even Old Main Road to get into the M13 as you come out of Hillcrest. There's a heavy backlog of standstill traffic as well. M4 Southern Freeway in from Umbilo is looking quite heavy as well. Then we get a truck crash at Rocky Drift between White River and Mbombela on the R40 route this morning. Cape Town's R300 looking quite slow from sort of Kales River territory up towards the N1. Busier this morning than normal, and a lot of traffic talking about things that are busier than normal on Marine Drive this morning, queuing deep back into Sunningdale, all the way coming through Parklands, Tableview, right down to Racecourse Road in the Milnerton area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai standing by with an update, and as far as sport is concerned. And Zai, yesterday you and I were talking about Sasha Feinberg Mngomezulu. Today you're looking at Pieter-Steph du Toit and in particular his versatility.
Absolutely. You know, there's one more showdown with the All Blacks, right? That's coming up this weekend. And we've got Dan Humans raving about Pieter-Steph du Toit's versatility. Like, I think he's the Swiss Army knife of the box. Whether he's at lock, flank, or maybe prop next, Pieter-Steph always got the box covered. And I don't know, we might just hope that he'll be kicking for goal next come Saturday when they take the All Blacks again on in a rematch. Let's hear what Dan Human had to say about the multiple positions that Pieter-Steph du Toit plays at world-class level.
We've got very versatile players here who can play a lot of positions, and I wouldn't say it weakened our scrum, but we realised that guys hasn't been as a combination together for, I think, Rohan and Pieter-Steph as a lock pair, and then we swapped Piri to another position, 5, and then he went to 7. So I think all that might have an influence on that, but it's decisions that we took, and I think they really delivered even.
Moving now to more rugby, the Springbok women fullback Nadine Roos says they're sticking to the game plan, which will be key when they host the Barbarian women in Cape Town on Saturday. Roos received a call-up to the SA Women's 15 at the back for an outstanding individual performance at the recently concluded Paris Olympic Games, having earned a personal contribution of 16 points and becoming South Africa's top point scorer. Now, speaking to SABC Sport, Roos says it will take a little bit of time to get the formula right.
But yeah, the expectation is to do well against the Barbarians. Obviously, as a team, you always want results, but I think as a team, we will stick to our processes, stick to the game plan that will be given to us, and have this week build up to the weekend, focus on the detail that's there, and try to make it a smooth ride on the field, and hopefully like the execution goes really well and it goes as planned.
Soccer now, and it's the Bafana coach Hugo Bruges explaining that he's left the star attacker Percy Tau out of the squad for 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Uganda and South Sudan because he's not in the right state of mind. Bafana take on Uganda at Orlando Stadium on Friday, and that match will happen at 6 p.m. They leave the following day in the evening for East Africa, where they'll play South Sudan. That's on Tuesday afternoon at 3 p.m. in Juba. Bruce has warned against this type of opposition that they will be meeting, particularly their physical presence.
They are difficult teams to play against. They are teams who have much power, much height. They play with the heart. There are some good individuals in the team, so that means that from our side we have to play on our level. And if we can achieve again and confirm again what we did in the last months, I think we have to be able to win those two games.
And finally, Paralympic news. Luzanne Coetzee doubled Team South Africa's medal tally at the 2024 Paris Olympics. She won the bronze medal in the 1,500 meter at Stade de France. The race produced a world record for the T11 class, with Ethiopia's Yayesh Teshfor taking gold. More sport for you here on The Morning Brief for SAFM. I'm Zai Khan.
The Business Update on SAFM.
All right, Ndauling Lechela is back with an update for you. And Ndauling, in this hour, we were talking earlier on about Transnet and the losses that they made for the past financial year, but they are upbeat, you say, in fact, going as far as to undertaking to turning a profit next year.
That's right. It seems positive about its prospects as it makes headway when it comes to turning the business around. The SOE's CEO, Michelle Phillips, says they aim to make a profit of 1 billion rand in its 2024-2025 financial year. Transnet says it has fully committed to the reforms outlined in the government's Freight Logistics Roadmap. The SOE is collaborating closely with the Department of Transport and Operation Vulindlela to fast-track the involvement of private sector partners in its rail and port operations. Now, prospects aside, looking at its latest financials, the picture does not look pretty. In the annual period, the group's loss widened to 7.3 billion rand from 5.1 billion rand. Transnet's loss for the year would have been lower, but two legacy issues made it worse. One issue is a court case with Sasol and Total Energy about pipeline fees, which Transport lost and had to set aside 4.7 billion rand for. The other issue is a dispute between two customers, which cost Transnet another 2 billion rand. These two issues added 3.5 billion to Transnet's costs and made its loss wider. The group has, however, managed to somewhat stabilize its operations, with revenue jumping over 11%. Rail volumes increased slightly to 151 million tons, up from 149 million tons last year, but it fell short of its target. And this is still far below what it achieved 6 years ago, showing that Transnet still has a long way to go to fully recover.
And Dowling, in company news, non-SOE, that is, Bidvest is what you're looking at, and they're shrugging off the tough economic conditions and, in fact, posting some solid earnings.
That's right. So Bidvest is a company that operates in a number of industries and a number of geographies. And I guess that diversification has given it somewhat of an edge, delivering growth under these tough conditions. During the annual period, earnings came in almost 7% higher. That's as 5 of its 7 divisions delivered earnings growth. The two laggards, the automotive division and renewables unit. Now, with the automotive business, it's really being hit by current market conditions. About an hour ago, we spoke about the decline in new vehicle sales and that downward trend just being reflected in these numbers. On the renewable side, Bidvest has been affected mainly by the slower uptake of solar equipment, as we've had less power cuts this year. Now, the group is positive about the recovery in the automotive division in particular, as it expects a rebound in the local economy. Looking at Bidvest overall, outlook, the group remains optimistic about South Africa's prospects, citing renewed confidence after the national election and reforms taking place at SOEs. It has warned that the logistics issues at Transnet may take up too many years to resolve, but is upbeat because the required work to deliver a long-term sustainable solution is underway.
And finally, an update from the markets. You've been looking at Asia, US futures, as well as a recap on the JSE.
That's right. Let's start off with Asia. Those markets pretty mixed as traders take a wait-and-see approach, turning more risk off ahead of US data later this week that may offer clues on Fed rate cuts. With that, we're seeing a 0.47% decline in China's Shanghai index and a 0.51% fall in Hong Kong's Hang Seng. Over in the US, futures in the red, investors on that end preparing for a fresh open after a long weekend. And then back at home, markets following global peers, trading in negative territory. The all-share closed 0.3% lower, fueled by losses in the financial 15, which was down 0.45%. In the currency markets, we are seeing a slightly stronger dollar, which has been weighing on the rand. It's currently trading at 17.86 to the dollar, falling from a 13-month high it hit at the end of last week.
All right, Ndauling Lichela will be back with you in the next hour with another update of economic news, as well as an update from the markets ahead of the opening of trading at the JSE.
Africa Update on SAFM.
And for that, Advocate Sipho Mantula joins us with our Africa Update. Good morning, Russ.
Refreshing morning to us and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
So we start in Tripoli in Libya, a situation there involving the UN support mission in that country, as well as a crisis that has to do with the central bank, also linked to a blockade of oil production. What's that all about?
You know, Tulas, this has been coming off since last week. There was a trigger actually from the east and the western factions in Libya that there was a removal of the veteran governor replaced by the rival board, and that led to the shutdown of the oil. And that is also linked to the bank, because the Libyan Central Bank is the sole legal repository for the Libyan oil revenues, and it's also paying the state salaries across Libya. So this crisis has been mediated by now the UN support mission in Libya, and we are expecting an agreement today to be signed by the two factions from the east as well as from the west. So that's how you have this challenge in Libya, in the length of Muammar Gaddafi, post-Gaddafi's removal.
And in Tunisia, the Electoral Commission rejecting a court ruling to reinstate 3 presidential candidates.
Tunisia decides to last in October. Now you have this challenge that last week the highest court there adjudicated an electoral dispute and said that the 3 candidates must be part of the voters' roll or to be part of the ballot papers. Now, yesterday what happened, Electoral Commission rejects this court ruling by removing these 3 candidates, and now opposition were in the offices of the Electoral Commission yesterday calling for them to even resign and saying that the current President Said is also now clamping down opposition towards this presidential election in October. So we might be seeing a crisis of judiciary versus Electoral Commission in Tunisia.
And another concerning situation out of Uganda, the U.S. embassy there issuing a security alert, and this has to do with the potential of terrorist attacks?
That is quite true, but the Ugandan police is also increasing vigilance among general public. You know, normally when you have the U.S. raising alert, it's all about their citizens in Uganda, but they don't consider the nationals of the host country. Now, the Ugandan police, they have taken this seriously, saying that they are also warning some of their communities to avoid the public spaces, because normally when you have this alert, you will tell people avoid shopping malls, avoid schools, and then places that are being visited by tourists. But this is worrying when one looks at the challenges that is coming out of East Africa. And there was a meeting yesterday between Rwanda and Uganda at the military level. We don't know whether is this the issues of the threats against terrorism in Kampala, but this has come out from the U.S. Embassy.
Yeah, it really is a concerning situation given the battles that some of the countries in East Africa have had over the years with the issue of terrorist attacks. Staying in that region, in East Africa, in Kenya, and that country's involvement in Haiti, as they say, Haiti to the rest of us. The Kenyan-led multinational security support mission in Haiti has urged the gangs operating in that nation to lay down their weapons. So a bit of, urging, intervening, but then also urging them to say, put down your weapons.
No, correctly, but remember that you have those General Babachu, Gabriel, who has been terrorizing the Haitians since the removal of the Prime Minister early this year. But what's happening now is that the U.S. has given this Kenyan multinational support some equipment, and that's when they are saying that they have what they call pacification operation that will be on sea, land, and air, and that will include clearing the roads. So they've given them a warning that the capital city of Haiti, Port-au-Prince, there will be those raids against the gangsters. This has been troubling also, because if you look at this mission of the UN is under Resolution 2699, which has to restore confidence in the people of Haiti post the killing of President Juvenal Moise in 2021.
Yeah, and there's a great deal of curiosity about why Kenya is in Haiti in the first place. Let's wrap up. Sorry, Advocate, let me just quickly move us along. Let's get to, this is heartbreaking, yeah? The historical archives, the chapter that you are opening today is heartbreaking to me. All I can say is, vroom, vroom.
That is gift to Leremi, who passed away on this day 17 years ago. He was signed by Pirates as a teenage player in 1999, moved from Pirates also 17 years ago in 2000 to join Mamelodi Sundowns. He got this accident when he was coming from a soccer match between South Africa and Cameroon, not far. That is in Albertine. And this is a sad moment that we know Gift Leremi was a superstar, was a national soccer player, was coming from the two big clubs in the country, Orlando Pirates as well as Mamelodi Sundowns. Asante sana to still leading the conversation at CFM observing the Heritage Month.
Yeah, that story is one of those deaths that were hard for me to take in this country. Poor Gift Leremi. Thank you so much. Let's chat again tomorrow. That's Advocate Sipho Mandula there with our Africa update for this morning.
The future of education is here. Impact offers two paths to the future. Design your own homeschooling journey with Impact Homeschooling, or let our experienced teachers guide the way with the Impact Online School. Get quality future-forward education. Visit www.impact.co.za today to register for 2025.
They will all walk onto the pitch with victory on their minds, but the final whistle will reveal who wants it the most, who will display football brilliance. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. TUT Matatanta Ladies FC versus the University of Fort Hare Ladies FC on Saturday, 7 September at 11 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still busy coming in from Crossmere this morning, passing Eldos. The N1's got an unusual queue northbound, just queuing up into the N12 Potchefstroom highway exit. Staying south of Joburg, there's big traffic again out of Alberton and Germiston. This morning, a breakdown at Van Buren, so that is all of a sudden quite a heavy backlog on top of the normal volume, and the left lane closure has been there forever. You've now got that truck in the mix as well. The N1 towards the William Mandela off-ramp, quite heavy backlogs both ways. Still no traffic lights there at that William Mandela N1 bridge. They haven't been working for the longest time. The N14, the Krugersdorp Highway, still queued up into a crash scene just north of the Pretoria West exit. That's quite a heavy backlog. And Paul Kruger through Capital Park staying busy as well this morning. Been tracking some delays coming from the Mayville side in towards Capital Park on your way to central Pretoria. M13 from Hillcrest stays heavy on the way to Kloof. That's a crash halfway through near Maytime. Bad enough on the M13 that it's pushing traffic back on the old main road, back into the sort of shopping, retailing area of the Hillcrest. So very heavy coming out of that side this morning. M4, the Southern Freeway through Congela and Umbilo is very heavy. Cape Town, the R300 just changing its traffic pattern. There was a big queue up through Brackenfell towards the M1. Slightly changed with a crash on the side of the R300 northbound by the Van Riebeek Road exit to Kales River and Stickland. So a queue back towards the Stellenbosch arterial. Baden-Powell's quite sluggish between Jeff Decay, Masemola and the N2. That's queuing up both ways. And a lot of traffic all over Marine Drive this morning. Sunningdale to Milnerton, Milnerton through to Lagoon Beach, and then Parton Island through towards the M1. There's three queues of traffic to work through coming in from the Sunningdale Tableview area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The only talk radio morning breakfast show that makes sense. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
It's great to have you with us this morning. We will take some of your calls as well as your voice notes throughout the day here on the Morning Brief. But right now, let's focus a bit on this story now. This week, we are expecting the Minister of Justice, Thembi Simelane, to start answering some questions around the allegations that she received a loan of about R500,000 or thereabouts from a company that was involved in the transactions around the VBS bank scandal, as well as the investment that were being made unlawfully by municipalities into a mutual bank, which they were not allowed to do. So pressure piling on the Minister of Justice to account, and there's been an undertaking. We've seen that she will account to Parliament later this week, but also right now set to appear before the ANC's Integrity Committee. Takalani Ramanyimi from the Amalgamated Amalgamated Lawyers Association Women's Chapter joins us now. Good morning, Takalani. You have written to the President and calling for some accountability by the Minister of Justice. What specifically are you calling for?
Okay, good morning to the season. Good morning to your listeners. Thank you very much for having me. Perhaps as a starting point, I should mention that as the Amalgamated Lawyers Association Women Chapters, we champion women leadership, and therefore we saw it important that we state our position in respect of this matter. We saying that we do support that the minister should be held to account, because if we have to check the position or the portfolio that she's in, it's one that requires a person of integrity. So therefore, we are saying that she must be accountable, she must be brought to book if she's found of any wrongdoing, but rather what we see and what we find as quite disturbing is now this contravention that she must be suspended. Then we ask ourselves, why must she be suspended in circumstances whereby she has not been found guilty of anything? And we see it as an attack to women leadership. So therefore, we saw it then that we wrote to the President and say that we support her, but rather she should be accountable and answer to all the questions.
So you are saying, if I understand you correctly, that your support for her is not destructive of the need for her to be accountable?
That's correct.
And just,
our statement should not be construed as if we are supporting any wrongdoing, if ever she's found of any wrongdoing. We do not at all encourage unethical conduct or any corrupt conduct for that matter. But we are saying that in the meantime, before she is found guilty, we are fully behind her, but we do support that she does answer and she is held accountable if found guilty of any wrongdoing.
And have you seen any signs that she's been doing that? I mean, this issue has been in the public domain for a good part of the last 2 weeks, and all we've gotten really is an undertaking that the answers will be provided in Parliament later on this week, and also seeing that she's going to appear before the ANC's Integrity Committee. What about accountability to the public at the point at which this allegation is made, certainly if there's no wrongdoing on her part?
I think the approach that she took, it's a prudent one to say that I will account as and when I'm called to. Because remember, if she is now to say that I am giving my answers to the public, she is now going to a public court in a way. Now we are saying that the public must now determine whether she's guilty or not. But the approach that she took, I supported fully, because she's not saying I'm not going to account. She's saying I will account, but rather let me do it at an appropriate forum.
But is public accountability not appropriate? Is that not an appropriate not an appropriate forum? We elect these politicians and we expect accountability from them.
Yes, that's very true. Most definitely, public accountability is of importance, and I think that as a public, as and when the situation unfolds, as she goes through to the integrity committee, as she appears before that, the public will be fully aware of everything that is transpiring there. When she goes before Parliament, the public will also be aware of what is happening. So in a way, she will be accounting to the public as well.
But you will have heard the criticisms of other politicians as well, especially of the ANC, in accounting to the ANC's integrity committee. That's an internal structure of the ANC before the public knows. So until it all plays out before Parliament, the public is left in the dark, and you and I know how quickly these ideas and perceptions can form and cement if you fail to deal with them right up front.
That's correct. I mean, perhaps as a way of an example in answering that, you would recall, I think if my memory serves me well, in 2022, the Ala Women chapter wrote to the Office of the Chief Justice in regard to allegations of sexual harassment in the Limpopo divisions of the High Court. That was an internal process. We were informed that instead of us going to the public route, we should have rather came before the committee, which is the Judicial Conduct Committee, with our complaints. And to this date, the JP has not answered to those allegations in the public aspect, but rather he has been subjected to the JSC Conduct Committee to answer to those allegations, but he has not said or given a statement, rather, even in public.
Right. Okay, so just finally, just to recap then, Ms. Ramanyemi, you are saying no to suspension, but yes to accountability.
Most definitely. It's a no to suspension, because Thulasizwe, if you would check, this is, I think, the second female to be appointed as the Minister of Justice since the dawn of democracy. And we are in the 7th administration. So we are still lacking in terms of gender equality in our country. So for us, when a woman is appointed to such a position, it's inspiring for us. And therefore, we feel like this is an attack on women empowerment and also on women leadership if we are going to blow this thing way out of proportion and say that she must be suspended in circumstances whereby she has not been found guilty of any wrongdoing.
All right.
Accountability, yes.
All right.
We are for that.
All right, we hear you. That's Takalani Ramanyemi of the Amalgamated Lawyers Association, the women's chapter of that. Listening in on that conversation, one of our listeners is Lisiba Khobokwane, and you want to talk, Lisiba, about this very issue of the Justice Minister and the allegations against her regarding to VBS money. Good morning.
Good morning, Timon, and good morning to your producers there, Level, and thanks for taking my call. You see, I'm talking here as a person who voted for the African National Congress that deployed Comrade Tembi there, and as a voter who voted for ANC and as a leader of the ANC. I think this is what caused us to stay there below 50%. We're sitting there with government of national unity, which don't even understand how it works because of this kind of attitude. I think what the lady just said, it does not work for us as the African National Congress. I think what Comrade Tembi could have been long done. She knew very well. She understands local government very clear. She knew that purely by investing in the mutual bank was wrong. In terms of Municipal Finance Management Act, the money of Polokwane municipality should have not even gone to that bank because it's not a normal bank. It's a mutual bank. The law does not allow that. But even before we can say she's not charged, she will account, that department that Comrade Tembi is presiding on, Justice Department, President should not even appoint her on that position because it creates chaos to that department. The people that have to go through the process of judiciary and so on, having the minister up there, having not to account. Look, they say a coffee shop has been funded in Gauteng, and we're not even sure the money has been repaid. And generally here in Limpopo, where Comrade Tembi is coming from, we know the damage, the bank costs, the ordinary people in Toyando and other areas, the way they have emotionally suffered. For us as the ANC to associate ourselves with that bank, we are not the VB, we are not EFF where there is no accountability.
Right.
In the ANC there is accountability. The minister should have not been appointed. The minister should do the right thing and stuff like that.
I'm at the top of the hour.
Yes, we've got so many minutes to deploy there.
Thank you for your inputs. That's Lisiba there in Khobokwane weighing in on that situation around the Justice Minister, Thembi Simelane. It's 8 o'clock. Play Powerball for an estimated 78 million rand. In fact, I was not supposed to do that. All right, let's go to the news at the top of the hour. And and Musa on standby.
In our top story, 6 suspects killed in a shootout with KZN police and the police minister to address extortion threats in the country. Good morning. 6 suspects who were wanted in connection with a number of murders and extortion have been killed in a shootout with police at a flat on the Durban beachfront late last night. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson Robert Nechihunda says the suspects allegedly shot 5 men execution style in the Marion Hill area in the west of the metro on Sunday night. They were also linked to a triple killing in Mpumalanga township west of Durban on Friday, as well as the robbery of a shop in the building they were found in. Nechihunda elaborates.
Police followed information that the suspects were in hiding in Newlands East, and upon arrival, further intelligence was collected that suspects were at a rented holiday apartment on South Beach Avenue in the Point area of Durban. When police announced their presence at the apartment, the suspects opened fire and a shootout ensued. All 6 suspects were shot and fatally wounded during the shootout. No police officer sustained any injuries. It is also suspected that suspects were involved in the illicit drug trade.
Nechihunda also says police are still looking for the person who booked accommodation for the suspects. The debate on extortion in the country will take centre stage in the National Assembly today. Police Minister Senzo Mchunu is expected to deliver a ministerial statement in the House. When he recently released the quarterly crime stats, Mchunu described extortion for so-called protection fees as a disturbing criminal phenomenon. Mercedes Besent reports.
Allegations of extortion have been making more daily headlines recently. Some doctors, schools and small businesses are just amongst the few who allegedly became victims of extortionists who are demanding a so-called protection fee. This criminal activity is expected to come under intense debate in the Assembly later today. Police Minister Senzo Mchunu's statement will outline the actions taken by the police to deal with the threat posed by those committing acts of extortion in South Africa. Members of the National Assembly will have an opportunity to debate Mchunu's statement.
Non-compliance with relevant legislation on air pollution and emissions is becoming a problem in some provinces of the country. This emerged during the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment's Air Quality Governance Lekgotla. It's been 20 years since the National Environment Management Air Quality Act was signed into law. The conference is being held on a virtual platform. National Air Quality Officer for the department, Dr. Patience Gwaze, says Gauteng, Limpopo and the Free State are the main transgressors when it comes to air quality control.
But what is it telling us is, if you look at the past 4 years, despite the challenges of the recovery, despite all the other challenges, we can see that we need 365 days of compliance. There are provinces that are faring better than others. There are provinces, the Free State, Gauteng, Limpopo to extent, Mpumalanga in the northwest, that are possibly faring the worst.
The Cradock 4 inquest has been postponed to June next year after the Gqeberha High Court in the Eastern Cape heard two applications over who should be responsible for the legal costs of the inquest. It was expected to start yesterday and run until the 20th of September, but it was postponed due to the two applications filed by the State Attorney and Umbulelo Goniwe, nephew of the late Matthew Goniwe. The start of the inquest will coincide with the 40th anniversary of the Cradock 4 deaths. Meanwhile, the Eastern Cape Director of Public Prosecutions, Barry Madolo, says he's confident the state will be willing to cover the legal costs.
This state, I think, at some point will assist with the funding, but it's a sort of a longish process because they have to approach the state attorney. Then from the state attorney must go to the Solicitor General. From the Solicitor General, then they go to the Minister. So, but looking at the nature of these proceedings, I can't put my head on the block, but I can say I think the Minister may be amenable to assist.
Recapping the top story, 6 suspects who were wanted in connection with a number of murders and extortion have been killed in a shootout with police at a flat on the Durban beachfront late last night. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel bidder. SMS CAR to 43187 now. And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by Outsurance Essential. Get a quote today. SMS CAR to 43187.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Previously making your way to and from Pretoria this morning, crash on the M1 south at the R21. That's just causing an onlooking backlog back through towards sort of Rigel Avenue. N14 to Pretoria, the crash after the R55 Pretoria West exit backlogging things. N1 coming further south between Brockfontein and New Road stays heavy and queuing up out of Pretoria down through Clayville into the roadworks if you're on your way down towards the airport area. Durban this morning, the N2 running north stays busy between the M7 and Westwood Mall. Southbound there's a backlog as well, which will probably be with us most of the day again between the McGinnis Road and Spaghetti Junction. All of a sudden that's getting heavy, and breakdowns both sides of the N3 around Umlas Road. Heavy coming through from Ashburton, pretty heavily backed up from Camperdown on your way to Pietermaritzburg, so both ways. He's under pressure there. Cape Town, lots of traffic on the N1 inbound. There's a crash before Plattercliff Road, so a delay from Belleville, and then you're sitting traffic on the N1 all the way through to the elevated freeway. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, rugby, the Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus hinting at a possible fracture in Siya Kolisi's cheekbone, which will delay the team announcement until Thursday. And tennis action, the latest from the US Open. World number 1 Yannick Sinner and former champion Daniel Medvedev are set for a clash in the quarterfinals. Details around 8:30.
The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. The Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
Good morning, South Africa. This is the Morning Brief on this Tuesday, the 3rd of September, 2024. We are broadcasting live from the SABC's Radio Park building in Auckland Park, the citadel, I say, of broadcasting in South Africa and the African continent. We are SAFM. We've been at it for 88 years. We are leading the conversation. Coming up in this hour, we will be focusing a little bit on issues to do with gender-based violence. Some work being done by the Tears Foundation as well as the University of Johannesburg, just tracking the patterns of calls that are related to, incidents of violence directed at women and children in the country. They'll be giving us a sense and perspectives on geographic patterns in particular, as well as the other dynamics that have to do with impoverished communities and the prevalence of gender-based violence widely in South Africa African society, but specifically as it relates to this dynamic of how it plays itself out in impoverished communities. That is our interview coming up in the next few minutes. But also a bit later on, we'll be talking about the issue of stockouts at public health facilities is a great concern. Imagine a situation where, you can only rely on the public health service in some, far-flung area in South Africa. That is your only option, and you have a particular ailment and you get diagnosed and you're told that, sorry, we just don't have the medication that you need. Now you're stuck. And it then tends to also have a particular dynamic as well, where we are told that contraceptives are among those medications that are quite prone to stockouts. You can only imagine then the dynamics that then come into play, given the situation we face in the country in as far as gender equality and the relationships and gender-based violence is concerned. So that conversation coming up also within this hour. This is the morning brief here on SAFM. I'm Thulasizwe Simelane, here to deliver it to you.
Catch the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7 on SABC2. It's Elimination Week and the bottom 6 must bake their ultimate cookie and milkshake pairing. It's a match made in heaven, but will they perfect their flavor combinations under pressure? Take part in the weekly viewers competition and stand a chance of winning a classic stand mixer to the value of 10,000 Rand. That's the Tastemaster Junior this Tuesday evening at 7. Repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. Only on SABC2.
Comoros and the Gambia have a huge clash for 90 minutes in the AFCON qualifier. Both nations are optimistic for the significant 3 points. Yet, the question remains, who wants it the most? This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Comoros up against the Gambia on Wednesday, 4 September at 5 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Outsurance Essential is designed for older cars. A 48-year-old man pays only 325 Rand a month for his 2007 white Toyota Yaris T1 and gets up to 1 million Rand liability cover. That means if you cause an accident, the other car will be covered up to 1 million Rand. Get Outsurance Essential for unfinanced cars older than 5 years and valued at less than 125,000 Rand. It's time to switch and save. SMS CAR to 43187. That's CAR to 43187 today. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and information online.
Thulasizwe Simelane on the Morning Brief. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 9 a.m.
So the issue of gender-based violence directed at women and children in this country has been termed another pandemic in the country. Let's focus now on a particular aspect of it, the work that has been done by the Tears Foundation as well as the University of Johannesburg that is revealing some disturbing trends around gender-based violence, particularly where the emergency calls are coming from in terms of the patterns from where emergency calls come from. Let's welcome Marceline Machesa, a South African Medical Research Council specialist scientist, to give us a sense of that. Marceline, good morning and thank you for your time. So the emergency calls related to violence against women are widespread across the country, but there's a particular dynamic that you are observing that has to do with impoverished communities.
Good morning to you and to your listeners, and thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about these findings that are coming out from the Tear Fund call centers. They have reported that over the past 4 years, they've had 53,000 cases of emergency around gender-based violence, and this is coming more from rural impoverished communities. I must say to us that this is a good, I guess it's progress, because it means that we have reporting of violence, because traditionally in South Africa, we have had very high prevalence of violence. Like you've said, it's a pandemic, and we know that this is rampant in the country. But also what we have known from the many studies that we have done is that whilst violence happens to women and children, there is a lot of stigma and shame that comes with it, and so there is a lot of also underreporting. And so when we see these volumes of over 53,000 calls coming through, it appears that women and children are more prone or are becoming more open to reporting gender-based violence. And I think the pattern also that it is coming from impoverished communities is a welcome development, because it means that these are the communities where in our research we found there is a higher prevalence of violence because of many issues, part of them being the structural poverty that drives the violence in these communities.
Yeah, say a bit more about that. I mean, we talk about the issues of dependency being higher in rural areas simply because of how the socio-economics of our country play themselves out and are particularly pronounced in those areas. Layer that with the situation with gender-based violence. Does this align with your understanding of the situation?
So it certainly does align, that we know that when women are less empowered or have lower education, they are more likely to be in relationships where they become dependent on their partners, and so they are more prone or more likely to experience violence. And also we know that even from the men's studies that we've done around perpetration of violence, there's a whole conundrum around what are the drivers of violence, and part of it is that men are feeling economically marginalized, but also I think something that we need to acknowledge in South Africa is our history, where we have historical traumas, community traumas, and how these affect mental health. For example, we have many men in our studies that we've done who have reported post-traumatic stress, and that being something that drives their aggression towards women and children. So as much as we want to talk about structural issues, poverty driving violence, it's also important that we think of, more broadly in terms of the drivers. In this country, we've also seen, for example, how the abuse of substances drives the pandemic. And when we were in COVID and there were alcohol bans, actually we had reductions in the reporting of gender-based violence. So as much as it is about the socioeconomics, there's also other factors that are driving this beyond, the poverty, things like mental health, things like substances, but also in rural communities, we know that they are lagging behind when we think about social norms around gender, because they're trying to uphold cultural values, and some of these cultural values are to women, and so.
Right, I think we lost our guest there, Meselin Machesa, who is a South African Medical Research Council specialist scientist. I distinctly heard the line dropping there. Let me see if we have her back. Meselin, do we have you back?
Yes. Yes, I was just saying that beyond the socioeconomics, there are other drivers of mental health that are of violence that are worth noting. And I was talking about mental health, and I was talking about substances, and I was talking about traditional gender norms and cultural values that are being upheld in rural communities to the impediment of women and their experiences of violence.
Yeah, and the other element of this Tears Foundation work and the alongside the University of Johannesburg is that it reveals data about when calls are received, when the frequency of calls increases, and we are told that the frequency increases during office hours, but also you have also observed that women are more at risk of violence in the home or, at the hands of a male partner during evenings and weekends.
Yes, Tula. So we've done research previously that has looked at the patterns of rape occurrence in South Africa. And in that national study, what we did find is that the occurrence of rape is driven by different factors, some of it being about the victims or who becomes a victim. And there we looked at age and we looked at gender, and we found that, women are at risk at different times to children. So children were more likely to become victims during times when they are not in school. So it's after about 2 o'clock until around, 7, when there is no supervision for them at home, and then the perpetrators take advantage and victimize the children. And then for women, it was a different. Women were more at risk in the evenings and also during weekends. And much of this was happening, some of it was happening in residential settings, but some of it also was happening in social gatherings. And in that mix is how women become targeted, for example, when they are walking about or when they are in social gatherings where there is alcohol. So those patterns then differ. And what we are seeing here from the TFN data is that, there's also patterns to reporting, but I think we need to be cautious to say that those calls may not really be reflecting when the rape happens, because in the slides that I'm talking about, we found how victims or those who were victimized delayed in reporting. And so other things, and some of it is about the post-traumatic response. And so as much as we are seeing these patterns in the TFN data, it could be that these are times when
it is opportune to report. Yeah. Meselin, very quickly then, and lastly, you started off by saying that the fact that we are seeing reporting of incidents is a positive. How do we then, what interventions need to be there to back up that reporting with support, with action to respond to this scourge?
So Tulas, in South Africa, I think we've seen how the president has prioritized gender-based violence as a national priority, and we have a national strategic plan that outlines the different things that need to happen. They've got pillars that outline what needs to be done to address gender-based violence. Part of it is about prevention. These things should not be happening, and so there is a need for evidence-based programs that help working with men, working with communities, working with families to prevent violence. But also from a response perspective, in the data that I was talking about, we have seen how the criminal justice system fails victims. And so part of it is that the criminal justice system has to be strengthened and to improve outcomes for victims so that people can come forth and report, and also so that they can be linked to psychosocial services and they can heal. Because we have found in our research that part of the problem of violence is it's a cycle. So those who, for example, when you think about men who have been abused as children, who are victims themselves, become more likely to become perpetrators. And so part of disrupting the cycle of violence, even for women, those who experience violence are more likely to be re-victimized because they've not healed and they have mental health issues that then increase their vulnerability. So healing is a very important thing. And I guess the fact that TFN has this helpline where people are reporting and getting psychosocial services is a positive in the right direction.
Right. Meselin Machisa, a South African Medical Research Council specialist scientist, weighing in there on the data that is out from the Tears Foundation and the University of Johannesburg regarding the emergency calls about the issue of gender-based violence.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
Amatax ladies target all 3 essential points to climb up the ladder, but the ladies from eThekwini plan to demonstrate a sense of urgency to move from the bottom half. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch Mzansi Queens of the beautiful game. University of Pretoria Ladies FC versus Durban Ladies FC on Saturday, 7th September at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Play Powerball for an estimated 78 million rand and Powerball Plus for an estimated 22 million rand this Tuesday. That's right. 100 million rand in total estimated Powerball and Powerball Plus jackpots are waiting to be won. Buy your tickets now in store on nationallottery.co.za, the mobile app, cell phone banking, or simply dial *120 *7529 hash for USSD. Panda, Pusher, Play. Players must be 18 years or older. Play responsibly. Ituba is the proud operator of the National Lottery.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
So the Stop Stockouts project SSP, in partnership with the Richize, releases its most recent report, Contraceptive Supply Chain, Stockouts and Their Causes. And it reveals that previous reports from it have revealed that contraceptives are the most prevalent stockouts in the country. Stockouts in general, a problem in public health, let alone stockouts of contraceptives. Let's welcome now our guest on the line to talk to us about this a bit more. Dr. Jess Russell, who is a member of the Just Agency and Stop Stockout project. Dr. Russell, good morning. This is quite problematic, particularly the issue of contraceptives stockouts in public health.
Thank you so much. Good morning, and good morning to your listeners. Indeed, this is a huge problem. I want to just highlight that what we're finding to be a depletion in stock and stockouts that have been ongoing since 2015 are the injectable contraception, which is the 3-month or Petagen, as people know it from the from the service. And this is the most relied upon contraception in the country. It has been since the 1970s. Now, there's a problem with that in and of itself. But as you can imagine, if you're used to having a particular contraception every 3 months, and then all of a sudden it's not there, now you have to rely on something else. And then that gets depleted because, of course, the department and the supply chain have not been prepared for women shifting in huge numbers to other contraceptions. So I just wanted to explain that.
Mm-hmm. So what are the patterns? What do you find to be behind the stockouts of particularly contraceptives? Is it bad management? Is it a matter of, governance and failure to plan for the supply chain to keep working efficiently, or are there other causes that are at play?
Thank you for that question. So the main finding of this report, and really which is very surprising to us and enlightening to understand why this has been going on since 2015, is that our findings identify that there was poor national planning as the main driver of contraceptive depletion and stockouts between 2015 and 2020. And this was poor national planning at the top level with the Affordable Medicines Directorate, the Department of Health, and the Department of Women. The ongoing issues of depletion of stock and stockouts are more systemic issues that are happening at the provincial level. And these have to do with the systems that are in play to manage invoicing and payments. But at the national level, what we've learned is that the Department of Health donated contraceptive methods to the ECHO trial. Folks might remember the ECHO trial. It was a 3-year international randomized clinical trial. The majority of participants in that trial came from South Africa, in particular KZN. And it was meant, well, it's said to have examined the relationship between the 3-month injectable, Depo-Provera, and the potential that it might increase the risk of acquiring HIV. This was a major international study, and what happened was not only was the donation of contraceptions that the state had procured to this trial depleting the stock, but also the Affordable Medicines Directorate, the Department of Health, and the Department of Women did not anticipate that manufacturers would halt production because they were anticipating the results of this trial. And this meant a lack of supplier competition, which meant that suppliers that still existed could raise their prices in huge amounts, and this would weaken the national position to negotiate contracts at a fair price. This impacted the government and its procurement for several years. Now, we might remember that the ECHO trial, which is said to examine this relationship between the contraception and increased risk of acquiring HIV, found that that was not the case, that this relationship didn't exist. Now, there's controversy and debate around that. That's not the focus of our conversation this morning. Right. But the manufacturers did start, developing Depo-Provera again, and so it's been back on the market. There's been more competition.
Right.
However, this caused a stockout for 5 years in the country. That is a significant issue.
Right, Dr. Russell. Apologies, I am completely out of time. Thank you for taking the time and highlighting this truly important issue. One gets a feeling that we may need to return to this conversation. Dr. Jess Russell is a member of the Just Agency and Stop Stockout project, talking to us there about stockouts of contraceptives. At the bottom of the hour 8, let's check in with Ann Musa with the latest news headlines.
Good morning. Thanks to us. In the headlines, the Pretoria High Court has ordered the Department of Employment and Labour to immediately suspend a contractor running the department's UIF online services. As a result, the UIF online platforms are not available until further notice. 6 suspects who were wanted in connection with a number of murders and extortion have been killed in a shootout with police at a flat on the Durban beachfront late last night. And there has been mounting domestic and international pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu following the killing of 6 hostages by Hamas guards. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Mbombela out in Mpumalanga, just a couple of things you need to know. One is the roadworks on the N4, the ring road around the Leidenburg R37 exit. That's quite a backlog of traffic both ways. It's long term, but it's just worth knowing about if you're moving across the top of Mbombela. It does get very slow. And also the truck crash we mentioned earlier at Rocky Drift, now really causing some problems along the R40. It's being held up both ways between White River and Mbombela as well. Still with delays on the N14 heading towards Pretoria. It's yet another crash on the N14. Krugersdorp Highway just after the R55 Pretoria West exit. Crash on the side of the N1 South at the R21, just causing a bit of an onlooking slowdown from Rigel Avenue. Republic Road out of Randburg, really heavy across to William Mandela this morning. Big queues on William Mandela down through the sort of area towards Hyde Park, and behind that congestion, that Republic Road really struggling. Breakdown on the N3 north at Van Buren, so it stays heavy on the run through from the cement factory side. Durban, a breakdown on the N2 in the roadworks going south before Spaghetti Junction. Queues back as far as Umgera Road. And Cape Town, if you take the N1 inbound, give yourself plenty of time to get through. There is a crash scene near Plattekloof Road, so coming from Belleville into that scene's busy, and then from Plattekloof Hill all the way through to the elevated freeway into the city centre. It's jam-packed this morning. The bottom end of Nelson Mandela Boulevard from Searle Street coming down into that elevated freeway, busy as well. And that's only busy, that section of Nelson Mandela, only busy when there's a mighty jam up on the N1 elevated freeway. And that's what we got this morning. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
There was that moment where Siya Kolisi at the end of that game with New Zealand battered and bruised with that facial injury, but still went over and was able to greet the fans. It was one of those special moments. There were many, many special moments. But now there's concern about that injury.
Oh, it could be that Rassie Erasmus, wanting to keep us on our toes.
Yeah.
And if you know
Just
anything,
guessing.
yes, as he does, the mind
Keep
games.
New Zealand guessing.
Keep New Zealand guessing. But, Sia's cheekbone, if it's anything like his rugby, he'll probably tackle a brick wall. But seriously, if anyone can bounce back, it will be Siya Kolisi. I guess Coach Rassie Erasmus just making sure every cheeky detail is kept under wraps and not letting the cat out of the bag. But we'll definitely keep an eye on that team announcement. Fingers crossed, it's just a minor bump in the road for our captain, Siya Kolisi. In the meantime, we also have scrum coach Dan Human confirming Kolisi is still being assessed and his availability remains uncertain for the second round encounter that's on Saturday against the All Blacks.
Yeah, so far I think they're still busy assessing his possibility of being available for us the week. We'll see how we go through the week, but firstly I think it's important for us as well, and if he's not, next man in.
Let's go to more rugby. Springbok women's fullback Nadine Roos says sticking to the game plan will be key when they host the Barbarian women in Cape Town on Saturday. Roos received a call-up to the SA Women's 15 at the back of an outstanding individual performance at the recently concluded Paris Olympic Games, having earned a personal contribution of 16 points and becoming South Africa's top point scorer. The 28-year-old Roos says her slight break after the Olympics was much needed to realign ahead of this all-important return to 15s rugby.
Returning to the 15s after the Olympics, it's quite good. I had a period of some off time after the Olympics, just to focus on daily living, responsibilities and stuff, which was quite good. But as soon as I went into camp last week in PE, it was back to training mode, back to the reality of the working life, and it's good with the 15s.
Soccer news, 3 Ghana coaches, including former Premier League defender John Paintsel, are in a stable condition after a car crash. The head coach, Otto Addo, assistant Paintsel and goalkeeping coach Fatawa Daudu were on their way back from a scouting trip at a club game in Ghana when their vehicle was damaged as it avoided a head-on collision with a pickup truck that veered into their lane. The Ghanaian Football Association is hopeful they'll be okay to take charge of the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers against Angola and Niger on Thursday and Monday, respectively. And finally, the latest from the US Open tennis action. The world number 1, Yannick Sinner, and former champion Daniel Medvedev are set to clash. That's in the quarterfinals. Sinner advancing after a hard-fought win over the US 14 seed Tommy Paul, recovering from a 4-1 deficit in the first set to secure a straight sets victory. Medvedev, the 2021 champion, made light work of Portugal's Nuno Borges, cruising through in straight sets with an impressive 8 service breaks. This will be their 4th encounter this year, with both players looking to take advantage of the shock exits of Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz. Now on the women's side, Iga Swiatek continuing her march towards a 6th Grand Slam title, defeating Russia's Ludmila Samsonova in straight sets to set up a quarterfinal against the American Jessica Pegula. Meanwhile, Brazil's Beatriz Haddad Maia made history by becoming the first Brazilian woman to reach the quarterfinals since 1968. She'll face Karolina Mukova, who remains unbeaten in sets as the tournaments enter its final stages. That's your final bulletin on the morning brief. I'm Zai Khan. More with John Henniker around 12:30.
The Business Update on SAFM.
Zai, thank you. Let's go straight to Dowling Lechela with your business update. And Dowling, in this hour, you're looking at Sanlam. There's talk there about Sanlam and African Rainbow Capital. What's that about?
That's right, Tula. So Sanlam is still on its acquisition spree, fresh from acquiring Ashupol. This time around, it's buying a 25% stake in African Rainbow Capital Financial Services Holdings. Now, this firm controls African Rainbow Capital's interest in several companies, including Time Bank, AI Fund, and CrossFin Holdings. In terms of the price tag, Sanlam will pay 2.4 billion rand for some of ARC Financial Services Holdings shares. Now, there's a lot of swapping taking place here, as Sanlam already has interest in one of ARC's subsidiaries. So Sanlam will sell its 25% stake in ARC Financial Services Investments to ARC Financial Services Holdings. In return, ARC Financial Services Holdings will give Sanlam some of its own shares with about the same amount. Sanlam says the deal builds on its existing partnership with ARC, and the company plans to keep working closely with ARC and its related companies to boost competition and offer its clients a wider range of products. Now, just to provide some context in terms of governance and ownership, Patrice Motsepe is Sanlam's deputy chairman and is the founder of African Rainbow Capital Investments. Now, the deal still needs to meet certain conditions laid out by the Competition Commission and is expected to be finalized by the end of October.
Staying with the theme of mergers and acquisitions, and Dowling, Takealot and Superbalist. There was a time when Superbalist was, all over the place. I mean, it was a leading e-retailer. What's happening with that conversation about Takealot selling Superbalist?
Now, there's just been mounting pressure from Chinese retailers like Temu and Shein, just weighing on Superbalist, and this then has prompted Takealot Group, Naspers' e-commerce arm in South Africa, to sell its fashion subsidiary. Now, Superbalist has been acquired by a group of investors led by Black Canvas Capital, a private equity firm, and other retail investors. Takealot is South Africa's largest e-commerce company, which owns Takealot.com, Superbalist, as well as Mr. D, but is only a small part of the retail market, accounting for about 2%. Companies in the e-commerce space in SA have been struggling to turn a profit, especially with, the global players coming in. We recently had Amazon also launching its local platform. So, just grabbing more market share from the local players. Now, Takealot being one of those companies, in the last reporting period, the group reported a loss, mainly driven by Superbalist as it struggled to gain market share. Its other parts, though, Takealot.com and Mr. D, actually made a profit. Now, the price tag of the deal has not yet been revealed. In the meantime, Takealot says it will work closely with the team during the transition process, providing warehousing and logistics services to Superbalist through a multi-year service agreement. The group further said that the disposal will allow it to focus on expanding its core businesses, that being Takealot.com and Mr. D Food.
Lastly, Dowling, JSE about to open. What kind of a day are we looking at?
It's a busy day for local traders. Earnings from ShopRite and Motus out today. Stats SA will also be releasing second quarter GDP numbers, so lots to chew on as markets open. The rand in the meantime remaining steady at 17.88 to the dollar. That GDP print will likely influence some action on that front. Economists expect growth to come in as high as 0.4% after a contraction of 0.1% in the first quarter. Moving over to Wall Street, futures trading weaker ahead of economic data, including that all-important jobs print, which will provide a clearer picture on the health of the U.S. labor market. We are still seeing that negative sentiment filtering through to Asia, with traders booking profits as the international earnings season wraps up. Those stocks on track to close the day mainly in the red.
Thank you, Dowling. That's Dowling Lechela with this morning's business update on the Morning Brief.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about OUTsurance.
My name is Alan. I'm 71 years of age and I live in Douglasdale. I'm paying 554 Rand a month for my 2022 Nissan Magnite.
Want a car insurance premium that'll blow your mind? SMS out to 30754 now for a quote. It's quick, it's easy, and it could save you hundreds of rands every month. Here's Amy.
To anyone who has not reached out to OUTsurance, what are you doing? Reach out today.
Blow your mind, not your paycheck. SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself why Outsurance was voted Best Car Insurer 2023 by the Star and Pretoria newsreaders. Here's Yusuf.
It just shows that Outsurance is top of the tops when it comes to insurers.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice. Only the final whistle can reveal who are the real football kings of East Africa. Neighbors won't get along during the East African Derby. This is the Total Energies 2025 Africa Cup of Nations qualifier. Witness the beauty of African football. Tanzania takes on Ethiopia on Wednesday, 4 September at 6 p.m. Live at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
You are listening to the Morning Brief with Thulasizwe Simelane.
Good morning, South Africa. It's good to have you with us. Now, here's a call that I can get in line with and fully support. The Pan-South African Language Board, PanSALB, is calling on the Department of Education to introduce the various Khoi and San languages in schools over the next 5 years. Let's welcome on the line the CEO of PanSALB, and that is Mr. Lance Schultz. Good morning, Mr. Schultz. Just tell us about your call. What is behind this call for these languages to be introduced in South African schools?
Firstly, a very good morning to you, Thulasizwe, and to all of your listeners, and thank you for having me. The call is really something which we are undertaking already with the Department of Basic Education in respect of the incremental introduction of African languages in our schools. We recently compiled and conducted a very comprehensive research report insofar as the status as well as where the prestige planning is insofar as Khoi and San languages, in addition to the various dialects and various derivatives of the languages concerned. And as a result, we would like to see the programs in terms of what is being afforded with curriculum development, what is being done in terms of corpus development, and we need to be very culturally sensitive also in the introduction of these languages, particularly in the Northern Cape, so that we give due respect and we take account of the unique linguistic attributes of all of these languages. So we're very excited about this, and of course it's a case of ensuring that we've got all the learning resources and that all the teaching aids put together to support these languages.
Yeah, say a bit more about that, the learning resources and the teaching that would be needed. Those are the modalities, right, that would be needed if this were to be implemented successfully. Where do we stand as far as codification, availability of teaching materials is concerned?
Yeah, so it's quite a complex task, and as you can understand, a number of these speakers are no longer straddling in these communities. They tend to default moving into other areas where there are employment opportunities. So I think the very first port of call to understand, and this doesn't only go for the Khoi and San languages, but languages can only develop if we continue to have mother tongue speakers and that we increase the use of these languages. So there's a few things that needs to take place. We need to continue developing textbooks. We need to ensure there's workbooks. With the advances of artificial intelligence and digital transformation, ensure that there's digital content and other resources in the Khoi and San languages, ensuring that we can also translate existing educational content into these languages. The other important thing that I need to mention is in terms of teaching aids, we need to get an increased exposure of multimedia, interactive tools, and to make it much more engaging so that we can increase the willingness and the appetite of these learners and make it more appealing for the teaching system as a whole as we make it available.
And what about, in particular, the dialect that only had one speaker remaining, Katrina Esso? How's that looking as an interesting dynamic of the work to preserve these languages? Where do we stand in supporting that effort to at least preserve it in some form?
Yeah, that's been a very difficult journey for us to traverse. And as you can understand, with one last fluent first language speaker in Mu, our Oma Katrina, it has been difficult. What we have been doing, we've been working over very, very many months with her to try and ensure that we can actually put this into a dictionary. Of course, we need to be considerate of her health and her circumstances as she's advanced in her years. But what we've done is we've put together a basic dictionary. We're in fact going to be launching the dictionary in the next couple of months. We had hoped to have the dictionary actually ready, which would be a talking new dictionary at the end of this month, as part of our Heritage Month celebrations, but unfortunately, due to the constraints that I just mentioned to you, we are somewhat delayed. And also you can understand that it's very difficult to compile the lexicographical body of work if you need to test it and then quality assure it and ensure the codification and decodification processes are all at the necessary standard. So we remain resolute that that dictionary will be launched. And one other program that we are doing also with OMA is the community school revitalization, to ensure that we also bring young learners in that will be taught this very, very important language, so that we averse the problem of losing it.
Fantastic. Lastly, Mr. Schultz, are you taking any lessons from the South African Sign Language having been made an official language in South Africa? Are there lessons that have come into that you are using in trying to promote the Khoi and San languages, particularly in the education system?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the first thing is we need to appreciate the path that was traveled in terms of getting the officialization for South African Sign Language. We are looking at that also to try and see what can be done to follow a pathway, also to seek some form of officialization. As you can imagine, we do provide recognition to the Khoi, San, Nama languages. However, I think there is a continued debate at the moment as to what can be done in terms of officializing the Khoi and San languages in whichever form it needs to take. So that's something that we are seized with, and we had a workshop about a week ago where we started unpacking the pathways that we need to look at, but certainly we're looking at the best practices that have been done so that we don't wait 10, 15 years, that we can do it in a relatively short space of time.
All right, I've got to thank you for your time and your insights. An important debate that you are raising, an important issue. That's Lance Schultz. He is CEO of the Pan-South African Language Board, PanSALB.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Another crash on the N14, the Krugersdorp Highway this morning. This really is a high collision zone through the morning rush hours. We see collisions there regularly. If you're on your way to Pretoria, there is still a queue between the R55 and Brockfontein interchange into that scene, although it is starting to ease up. The N1 going north, looking slow towards the R21, that's heading up towards Pretoria. And roadworks, a little bit of a change up today between Pomona and Benoni exit, leaving the airport. There is quite a backlog of traffic into that scene. Yesterday it seemed to flow okay, but not this morning. Pretty busy into Sandton, particularly coming in on Rivonia Road from Morningside, Winnie Mandela, down through Hurlingham from Bryanston in towards Sandton, driving down towards Hyde Park is busy. Behind that, Republic Road's quite heavily backed up as so well this morning. Driving into Quebeca, the N2 remains to a single lane as you approach the M4 Settlers Way. So coming in from Blue Water Bay, that traffic remains slow. Just north of Quebeca as well, there's a lot of roadworks on the road that links Addo through to Kirkwood. If you find yourself driving that way, don't be surprised if you come across long delays. Truck crash at Rocky Drift between White River and Mbombela, the R40 under pressure both ways into that particular scene. And Cape Town today, the N1 is super heavy. If you're still coming in from Durbanville, Kraaifontein, Brackenfell, Belleville, traffic really from Plattekloof Road all the way through to the elevated freeway. Bad enough to be pushing Nelson Mandela Boulevard, approaching the elevated freeway back towards Searle Street, and still heavy backlogs. Kuberg Road and Marine Drive coming in. Some problems getting off those routes into that busy N1. Delays through Brooklyn and through Pardon Island. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Call Thulasizwe now, 086 000 2032.
All right, let's take some of your comments via the WhatsApp and the calls that you've been giving us over the last 3 hours since the show began. We want to now take some of your calls. We've covered quite a lot of ground this morning, and we've been talking about the construction mafias, extortion, that whole issue of extortion, and in the last while talking about the status of the Khoi and San languages, with the Pan-South African Language Board calling for their introduction into the South African education system. They're calling it incremental introduction into the schools and teaching of the Khoi and San languages. So we want you to weigh in on some of these conversations. The number to dial is 086 000 2032, and your WhatsApps and voice notes on 061 410 4107, and we'll take those calls and have those conversations with you. And as I say, the Ideas Refinery is open. Put yours on the table, and let's stress test them and engage each other on them and see how far we get by way of trying to find consensus. In fact, Magdalene has done exactly that and joins us now from Bloemfontein. Magdalene, what's on your mind?
Morning, Tulani.
Good morning.
Hi, Tulani. I'm sad. I don't know how to express myself with this thing. What are these people doing to us South Africans? What is the Central CEO saying to us on the national, international TV news to say that they are going to bring out a billion tender for the road construction, but the criteria for those who are going to apply for those tenders, it doesn't matter whether you are a foreign national or you are a South African. If ever we want to change the law, we need to go to the parliament and change the law whereby the tender should be at least for the South Africans only. Are these people not listening to us South Africans to say, prioritize the South Africans? We were dealing with Mr. Morero just last week. So now on the other side, somebody's coming for the business opportunity rather than saying this business opportunity strictly for the South Africans, because we want this equity, we want this democracy. Sure. That is why I was saying previously, is this democracy for us South Africans, or is this democracy for the foreign nationals? Because they prioritize, we try to, every time we stop them this side, they come this side. Right. What is the meaning of this, man?
All right, I've got to thank you for that, Magdalene. I don't have time to engage you on that, but I have heard you. Thank you for making that point. Let's go to Butana, who is in Rosebank. And Butana, you want to talk about the construction mafia. Good morning.
Indeed. Good morning, Mr. Simelane.
Good morning, sir.
The ANC told us that they were harboring construction mafias. The ANC told us that they were harboring crooks. The ANC told us that we were harboring thieves. It's not me. Ask Mr. Mtolo, the provincial secretary of the ANC. Okay? By the way, Mr. Mkonazi and the team, they are fit for purpose. They are doing well. They are capable. They can explain themselves effectively. I appreciate their help, their work. And then they must keep up the good work. As for the ANC, if you want to know about the construction mafias, even ask the former MEC of KZN. Sure. He wanted to negotiate with them.
All right, Butana, we will engage in the coming days when we have a bit more time for us to engage even better than I'm doing right now. Thank you for making that point. Rantisa is in Limpopo, and Rantisa, you want to talk about municipal corruption. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, sir. And how are you?
Very well, please.
Yes, thanks. But before that, let me appreciate the good work that is done by Commissioner Mkonazi there in KwaZulu-Natal, fighting crime. We need this kind of a commissioner. We hope other commissioners in the other provinces will do the same. This is the only way to end criminal activities in our own country. Thanks, good work for the commissioner there. So you see, I just want to raise the issue of Mogalakwena municipality. because the municipal mayor was on the show a few weeks ago. The progress has been noted, but some of the things that we want to see the breakthrough in some of the cases that have been reported, because we haven't seen people being charged straight before court, so that the municipality must be able to recover the money. Other thing, the money that the municipality is spending, because he promised that he will give us the figures of the money that municipalities is spending in pursuing these cases in court. But we appreciate if there is a progress there. With Dr. James Moroka municipality, here we've got the challenge that the municipality is so corrupt to the core to the extent that it's even affecting the municipalities nearby that are sharing the infrastructure. There is a reservoir here in Valkrab where it belongs to the Department of Health.
Right.
The Skukune District Municipality and Dr. James Moroka Municipality in Mpumalanga and Skukune Limpopo. The pump operators and the security personnel that have been pumping water for the local communities here in Elias Motsoaledi.
Rantisa, I'm so sorry. I'm completely out of time. Thank you so much for that input. That is Rantisa from Limpopo, and it's gone 9 o'clock. Kathy Motlatlana standing by with the talking point. Essential cover from Outsurance pays out claims in cash, allowing you to choose your own panel beater. SMS CAR to 43187 now.
In our top stories, UIF online platforms unavailable until further notice, and 6 suspects killed in a shootout with KZN police. Good morning. The Pretoria High Court has ordered the Department of Employment and Labour to immediately suspend a contractor running the department's UIF online services. As a result, the UIF online platforms are not available until further notice. In a statement, the department says the platforms affected include U-filing, unstructured supplementary service data, virtual office, as well as the COVID-19 TERS system. The department spokesperson, Tebogo Tejane.
Minister Math welcomes the judgment and wishes to assure UIF clients and stakeholders that capacity at UIF service points will be ramped up and operating hours extended to ensure that all applications and submissions are processed timelessly. We are anticipating that the disruption will result in increased volumes of clients at our service points.
6 suspects who were wanted in connection with a number of murders and extortion has been killed in a shootout with police at a flat on the Durban beachfront late last night. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson Robert Nechihunda says the suspects allegedly shot 5 men execution style in the Marion Hill area in the west of the metro on Sunday night. They were also linked to a triple killing in Mpumalanga township west of Durban on Friday, as well as the robbery of a shop in the building they were found in. Nechihunda elaborates.
Police followed information that the suspects were in hiding in Newlands East, and upon arrival, further intelligence was collected that suspects were at a rented holiday apartment on South Beach Avenue in the Point area of Durban. When police announced their presence at the apartment, the suspects opened fire and a shootout ensued. All 6 suspects were shot and fatally wounded during the shootout. No police officer sustained any injuries. It is also suspected that suspects were involved in the illicit drug trade.
Nechihunda says police are still looking for the person who booked accommodation for the suspects. The Education Minister, Siviwe Rahube, says the extortion racket targeting schools is interrupting learning and urgent intervention is needed. Rahube was speaking at Westview Special School in Gqeberha, the Eastern Cape, on a learning and listening tour. She says the rise in extortions at schools is a serious concern, and the department will soon be speaking to the Police Minister, Senzo Mchunu, about interventions to safeguard schools as exams are approaching.
Look, I mean, it's absolutely a crisis for us because we are exactly 49 days away from start of the matric exams, and we cannot have a situation where our educators and our learners are feeling unsafe in their communities. That's part of the reason why we've elected to come to Nelson Mandela Bay, because we understand the crisis here in certain neighborhoods here in Nelson Mandela Bay. I'm also made aware that in the OR Tambo district, there's also a big problem around extortion. We want to make it clear to criminals that our schools are places of safety.
The Eastern Cape MEC for Education, Fundile Gadi, says one of the major challenges the education sector is facing in the Eastern Cape is the scholar transport issue, and says they are working together with the Transport Department in eradicating this problem.
We've got a history minister here, a history of pit latrines, toilets that have been a thorn in the flesh of the ecosystem of government. And of course, through your office, we have been able to be given 1,500 schools to eradicate those pit latrines. We are on the last batch now, about 100 plus schools that were left, which will be finished in this financial year.
And finally, there's mounting domestic and international pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu following the killing of 6 hostages by Hamas guards. This has provoked a further night of protests by Israelis who want a ceasefire agreement to secure the release of those still being held. Netanyahu has asked for forgiveness for failing to rescue them, but will not make concessions.
These murderers executed 6 of our hostages. They shot them in the back of the head. And now after this, we're asked to make concessions? What message does this send Hamas? It says, kill more hostages, murder more hostages, you'll get more concessions. The pressure internationally must be directed at these killers, at Hamas, not at Israel.
Recapping the top story, the Pretoria High Court has ordered the Department of Employment and Labour to immediately suspend a contractor running the department's UIF online services. As a result, the UIF online platforms are not available until further notice. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
And that's the news for this hour. Theft, accident and 1 million rand liability cover, all covered by our Insurance Essential. Get a code today. SMS CAR to 43187.
It is Game On!
Game On!
It is where the real lovers of the game dive deep into detail of the upcoming local and international fixtures. Join us on Game On as Mr. Sizwe, Click Click Bang Mapena and the legends zoom closer to the thrilling performance of the pitch personnel.
How is your favorite team's performance?
Find out on Game On every Saturday at 2 p.m. on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com.
SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Need a loan? Pay for what you need when you need it with a personal loan from Nedbank. And if you open a MyGoals Plus or MyGoals Premium account, you can enjoy 200 Rand cashback every month for the duration of your loan. That's 200 Rand every month to buy extra groceries or save for a rainy day. Visit nedbank.co.za and join the bank that's best for your loans. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Our Insurance Essential is designed for older cars. A 48-year-old man pays only 325 Rand a month for his 2007 white Toyota Yaris T1 and gets up to 1 million Rand liability cover. That means if you cause an accident, the other car will be covered up to 1 million Rand. Get Our Insurance Essential for unfinanced vehicles older than 5 years and valued at less than 125,000 Rand. It's time to switch and save. SMS CAR to 43187. That's CAR to 43187 today. Our insurance is a licensed insurer and FSP, T's and C's, and information online.
The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
My classmates would go and they'll share how they want to be doctors, how they want to be lawyers, how they want to be engineers. With one kid who said, I just want to make enough money so that I could have a burger and a milkshake every single day. When it was my turn, this is the dream that I shared with the class. I said, I want to leave Zimbabwe, and I want to go to America, and I want to become a successful entrepreneur. So I had the longest answer in the class. Fast forward to my senior year in high school. Zimbabwe was going through an economic crisis of epic proportions. We had hyperinflation rate. So right around 2003, when I was a senior in high school, our inflation rate was about 1,000%. 98% daily, not annual, inflation rate. So if you buy something for $1 today, tomorrow it's $2. Wednesday, it's $4, and so forth and so forth. So this was me about to graduate high school, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, how am I going to make this dream come true?